Chapter 232. That's right. How could there be so many righteous figures in the primordial world? All of them look so perfect and flawless. No matter how I look at it, it feels fake. Shaking his head, Feng Zichen thought, in this world, apart from the great Tao of the chaos outside the realm, nothing was perfect. Even Pango was only infinitely close to perfection, but not truly perfect. Perfection was what Pangu and all the living beings in the world were pursuing. If even Pangu could not do it, how could the mighty figures of the primordial world do it? Fake. It was too fake. However, on second thought, Feng Zichen could also enjoy the treatment that they could enjoy. This made him much more excited. In other words, from now on, Feng Zichen would also become an incomparably righteous figure in the primordial world and be respected by all the living beings in the primordial world. In life, who didn't want to have a better image? Fellow Taoist Zichen, if you have time in the future, you can come to Longevity Mountain for a chat. Poor Wei still has something to do, so I'll take my leave first. Zenyuanzi put away the earth book, first bowed to Nuwa, then turned to Feng Zichen and said, if I have time, I'll definitely visit you. With a smile, Feng Zichen replied, okay. Nodding, Zenyuanzi's figure flashed and disappeared from the North Sea. Fellow Taoist, I hope you can consider what Porway said. The heavenly court is the center of the primordial world. That is the place where we can show off our skills. After Zenyuanzi left, Kuan Peng did not want to stay here for long. He continued to persuade Feng Zichen. Without waiting for him to reply, he said to Nuwa, fellow Nuwa, there have been a series of changes in the North Sea. Poor Wei still needs to appease the living beings here. I'll take my leave first. Fellow Taoist Kunping, if you have something to do, go and do it as soon as possible. Don't worry about poor Wei. Nuwa waved her hand and said nonchalantly, Feng Zichen greets the Holy Mother. After Kunping left, Feng Zichen stepped forward and bowed to Nuwa respectfully. There's no need for such formalities. With a wave of her hand, she lifted Feng Zichen up. Nuwa smiled and said, when I first met you, you were just a child who had just stepped onto the path of cultivation. At that time, you were in the lesser heaven stage, a stage that had never appeared in the primordial era. From that moment on, I knew that you were destined to be extraordinary. As expected, you didn't disappoint me. With your great wisdom, you established the Tao of gods and devils, opening up a great path to the heavens for the creatures after heaven. Even though I knew that you were extraordinary, I still didn't expect that in just over 100,000 years, you would complete the heaven-defying change of fate. Not only did you attain the Tao of Daluo Jinxian, but you also transformed from a creature after heaven to an authentic Pango. In terms of background, even I am far inferior to you. In the primordial era, only the 3 pure ones and the 12 ancestral shamans can be compared to you. Nuwa was not surprised that Feng Zichen could cultivate the Daluo Jinxian. After all, he was in existence who could open up the path of Tao for countless creatures after heaven at a young age. His wisdom was something she had never seen in her life. It could be said that it would be strange if Feng Zichen could not become the Daluo Jinxian. Even if Feng Zichen only used more than 100,000 years to cultivate the Daluo Jinxian, Nuwa was only surprised, not shocked. What really surprised her was that Feng Zichen had become the authentic Pango. This was simply impossible. In the entire primordial era, there were countless innate god fiends born from the flesh and blood of Pango. There were only 15 who claimed to be the authentic Pango. Countless innate fiend gods yearned for the identity of the true Pango clan. Others did not know the origin of Feng Zichen, but Nuwa knew it very well. He was Feng Zichen, a postnatal creature, and had nothing to do with the great Taoist priests of Pango. How could he surpass the innate god fiends born from the flesh and blood of Pango and obtain the approval of the will of Pango before them and become the 16th authentic Pango of the primordial era? It was a coincidence. It's all thanks to the favor of the great Taoist priests. Feng Zichen said modestly as he bowed in the direction of Mount Buzhou. Attaining the Tao in the chaos outside the realm was one of his greatest secrets. It was also his hope of attaining the Tao in the future. At the same time, it was also his resurrection. However, it was not appropriate to mention it to outsiders. The heavens were impermanent and moved with the world. If he did not become a saint, he would be blessed by the heavens today. However, who could guarantee that the heavens would always be blessed by the heavens? It was always good to have an additional path of resurrection. That's right. Without the approval of the great Taoist priests, even if your talent is amazing in the primordial era, you can only become an innate god fiend and not an authentic Pangu. Feng Zichen's casual reason sounded quite reasonable to Niuhua. The most difficult thing to become an authentic Pangu was to obtain the approval of the will of Pangu. A group of innate god fiends born from the flesh and blood of Pangu were stuck here. No matter how hard they tried, they could not obtain the approval of the will of Pangu and transform into an authentic Pangu. On the contrary, as long as they could obtain the approval of the will of Pangu, no matter what their background was, they could become an authentic Pangu. Although Feng Zichen did not obtain the approval of the will of Pangu, he had obtained the approval of the great Tao and had the same effect. At this moment, Feng Zichen could not help but be speechless. He had only said a few words humbly. Who knew that Niuhua would imagine so much? To be honest, Niuhua's thoughts made sense. If she had not experienced it herself, she would have believed it. However, seeing that Niuhua had misunderstood, Feng Zichen was happy. He did not explain and changed the topic. I have to thank the goddess for helping me out. If the two of them really fought, I would be in trouble. If Niuhua was really thinking about the living beings of the North Sea, she would have persuaded the two of them to leave before Zhen Yuanzi and Kuin Peng started fighting. Why wait until now? She had clearly come to the North Sea at this time to help Feng Zichen. However, she was worried about his face and was afraid that he would be looked down upon by the mighty figures of the primordial world. That was why she used saving the living beings of the North Sea as an excuse. Feng Zichen was a smart person. How could he not see Niuhua's intention? It doesn't matter. Even without the two of them, I would have come here. You have established the Khanate sword principle this time and made a name for yourself in the primordial world. It can be said that you have greatly improved my reputation. Naturally, I have to give you some benefits. Tell me, what do you want? As long as it is within my ability, I can give it to you. Apart from luck, the only thing that saints fought for was their pride. Feng Zichen was Niuhua's disciple. He had caused such a big commotion in the primordial world, which naturally greatly improved Niuhua's reputation. It made him better than the other saints, and let him have a good time. Therefore, she was naturally very happy. She could not help but walk down from the palace of Empress Hua, and wanted to reward Feng Zichen. Your Highness, I want, hearing Niuhua's words. Feng Zichen's first reaction was that he wanted to obtain the Khanate Taiyin origin. This item was extremely important to him. With this item, he could cultivate the peerless magic, the Khanate Taiyin divine light. At that time, coupled with the Khanate Taiyang divine light on his body, he could cultivate the supreme magic, the Khanate Yin-Yang divine light. If he could combine it with the Khanate five elements divine light and evolve it further, he could cultivate the legendary magic, the Khanate Yin-Yang divine light. He could comprehend the wonders of Yin and Yang and the five elements and produce endless creation. The Khanate Taiyin origin existed on the Taiyin star. If Feng Zichen wanted to get it, it would be extremely difficult. However, Niuhua was different. They were both primordial goddesses and had listened to the Tao together in the Purple Cloud Palace. The two of them were naturally very familiar with each other. Not to mention, she was the matchmaker and presided over the wedding of Dijun and Shihi. With the friendship between the two of them, if Niuhua asked Shihi for the Khanate Taiyin origin, Shihi would not refuse. Therefore, without thinking, Feng Zichen was about to blurt out that he wanted the Khanate Taiyin origin. However, as soon as he said that, he saw the merit behind him from the corner of his eye. With a boom, it was like a bolt of thunder in his mind. A bold idea that would affect the future of the human race appeared in his mind. It was extremely strong and could not be dismissed. He forcefully changed the words that he was about to blurt out. "Goddess, I want to borrow your cauldron of heaven and earth." Once he said that, there was no way to change it. Feng Zichen could only continue according to the thoughts in his mind. I once heard that the Khanate treasure, the cauldron of heaven and earth, is the #1 refining treasure in the primordial world. It can refine all the treasures in the world and has the ability to go against the Khanate. It can refine Khanate spirit treasures. Now, I have some treasures that I want to refine into a handy magic weapon, but I can't find a suitable refining magic weapon. I just heard that the cauldron of heaven and earth is in your hands. Therefore, Zichen would like to borrow this treasure from you, goddess. After saying that, Feng Zichen bowed to Niwa. Refined treasures? I didn't expect you to be so rich. Looking at Feng Zichen in surprise, Niwa said with a smile, "Ordinary treasures could not use the cauldron of heaven and earth. Only some top Khanate spirit treasures could use this treasure." Feng Zichen wanted to borrow the cauldron of heaven and earth from her. It seemed that he had a lot of treasures on him. However, although she was surprised, Niwa did not refuse. It was just lending, not giving. She would not be reluctant to part with it. Although the cauldron of heaven and earth has the ability to go against the Khanate, this function can only be used once every 1,000,000 years. Even if I lend it to you, you can only use it once. You should use it carefully. Moreover, the cauldron of heaven and earth can only refine Khanate spirit treasures at most. As for supreme-grade Khanate spirit treasures, it can't do anything. Taking out the cauldron of heaven and earth, Niwa handed it to Feng Zichen while reminding him. The ability to go against the Khanate was too heaven-defying. Even if the cauldron of heaven and earth was a Khanate treasure, it could not be used without restrictions. Otherwise, if the cauldron of heaven and earth could continuously refine Khanate spirit treasures, the primordial world would be in chaos. Supreme-grade Khanate spirit treasures were created by the great Tao. They gathered the spiritual opportunity of heaven and earth and seized the fortune of the universe. They were born with the luck of heaven and earth and had unique characteristics. They had endless wonders and could not be refined by humans. The cauldron of heaven and earth was the strongest, but it was far inferior to the primordial world. Naturally, it could not refine supreme-grade Khanate spirit treasures. Chapter 233. One cauldron, 2 ears, 3 legs. It symbolized that Tao gave birth to one. One gave birth to two. Two gave birth to three. And three gave birth to all things. This was the Khanate cardinal treasure, the cauldron of heaven and earth. It had 3 legs and 2 handles, glistening with green light and making the universe hazy. It was like the carrier of the world, the embodiment of the universe. It contained the truth of the great Tao and emitted the qi of origin. According to legend, after the demon god who dominated the great Tao of heaven and earth fell, his body fell into the untainted land and combined with the chaotic vital qi to give birth to a top-level chaotic spiritual treasure, the heaven and earth creation cauldron. The moment this treasure was born, it possessed the power to shake the universe. Because it was formed from the body of the chaos demon god, it inherited the monstrous resentment of the chaos demon god after its death. Therefore, this treasure took advantage of the fact that the primordial world hadn't stabilized completely to suddenly erupt with divine might, and it drew upon the energy of creation in the world with the intention of shattering the grand Tao of the universe and destroying the primordial world. However, as Pengu transformed into all living things, his essence, qi, and soul merged with the will of the primordial world, giving birth to the 3 Taos of man, earth, and heaven. Driven by instinct, the three Taos of heaven, earth, and man suddenly attacked. They activated the power of the untainted land and Panga's remaining power and smashed the heaven and earth creation cauldron into pieces. 50% of its fragments fused with the origin of the universe to form the cauldron of heaven and earth, which fell into the hands of the celestial master of the celestial sect of wonders. Later, ancestor Qianquan died in the immortal slain formation, and this treasure fell into the hands of Taoist Hongjun. When the Purple Cloud Palace was conferred the position of saint, Taoist Hongjun had given this treasure to Nuwa so that she could use it to suppress her destiny. 30% of the fragments fused with the origin of creation to form the supreme grade, connate spiritual treasure, the cauldron of creation. As soon as the cauldron appeared, it disappeared into the primordial world and had yet to appear. The remaining 20% of the fragments were divided into 9 pieces and scattered all over the primordial world. Later, it was obtained by Yu, the great of the human race. He used the power of the human race to refine it into 9 cauldrons to suppress the destiny of the human race. Taking the cauldron of heaven and earth from Nuwa, Feng Zichen felt a huge force coming at him. It was as if a part of the world of heaven and earth was pressing down on him, causing his arms to sink. The cauldron of heaven and earth, as its name implied, was a world of its own. How could it be light? It must be incomparably heavy. As a saint, Nuwa could easily pick up 100 or even 1,000 square meters of space, let alone a single world. However, it was different for Feng Zichen. It was difficult for the Daluo Jingxian to lift the cauldron of heaven and earth. He couldn't help but bend down and exert all the strength in his body. Only then was he able to lift the cauldron of heaven and earth so that it wouldn't slip out of his hands and make a fool of himself. Good treasure! Feng Zichen praised as he looked at the cauldron of heaven and earth in his hand. One had to know that he was in existence that proved his Tao through strength. His strength was far beyond the imagination of the world. Even so, it was extremely strenuous for him to lift the cauldron of heaven and earth. In terms of weight alone, the cauldron of heaven and earth could probably suppress a Daluo Jingxian. From this, one could see how powerful this treasure was. I have no use for this cauldron at the moment, so I'll lend it to you for a period of time. I'm sure you'll have enough time to refine quite a few spirit treasures for the human race. After Feng Zichen put away the cauldron of heaven and earth, Nuwa said with a smile, "Holy Mother of Mercy!" Hearing this, Feng Zichen was overjoyed. He had thought that he would have to return the cauldron of heaven and earth after refining a magic treasure. He didn't expect Nuwa to be so generous as to lend it to him for a period of time. This way, he would be able to do a lot of things. All right, don't thank me. Waving her hand, she interrupted Feng Zichen's words of gratitude. Nuwa asked, "What are your plans for the future?" While presiding over the affairs of the human race, I'll search for opportunities in the tunnel, hoping to bear the tunnel flower and obtain the great Taoist priest's karma. After thinking for a while, Feng Zichen replied, of course, he had many plans, but it was not convenient for him to tell others. At the moment, 2 of his 3 flowers had bloomed, and he still lacked the tunnel flower. He could use this as an excuse. Great Taoist priests. That's right. You can be said to be the first person in the primordial world to bloom the flower of the heavenly Tao and the flower of the human Tao. You're only 1 step away from the legendary great Taoist priest's karma. It would be a pity if you give up now. Nuwa understood Feng Zichen's thoughts very well. Putting herself in his shoes, if she were in Feng Zichen's current state, she would also attack the great Taoist priest's karma. That was the great Taoist priests, the highest achievement of Daluo Jingxian. The Daluo Jingxian here was not the Daluo Jingxian of the primordial world, but the Daluo Jingxian of the primordial era. It was the Daluo Jingxian of the Sage-to-Be realm. It was the real Khanate Taoist priests. The great Taoist priests, in other words, was the first person below the saints. The tunnel contains all things. It is the path of creation and the path of all things. All life, death, and reincarnation in the primordial world are in it. If you want to refine the tunnel flower, you still need to put in more effort on the path of creation and life and death. The path of creation and the tunnel overlapped a lot. As the highest achiever of the path of creation, Nuwa did not specialize in the tunnel, but it was inevitable that she had some understanding of the tunnel by analogy. Therefore, she reminded Feng Zichen, "Thank you, Your Highness. Zichen will remember it." Feng Zichen bowed and thanked her. Although he had a complete plan in his heart, Nuwa's advice could also provide him with a lot of help. "It's good that you know what to do." Nodding, Nuwa suddenly said, "Oh, right. Master has already erased the demon ancestors' divine will from the pagoda that I took from you last time. You can use it now." The pagoda symbolizes the return of all spirits. It contains the great Tao of death and a portion of the Tao of life. With this pagoda in hand, it might help you comprehend the tunnel. Nuwa flipped her hand and took out the pagoda. She handed it to Feng Zichen. In order to control the authority of death, the demon ancestor Rahu had created the pagoda, a supreme treasure. He wanted to use this pagoda to evolve the world of death and establish the return of the dead. Life and death were important parts of the tunnel. Therefore, it was not impossible to use the authority of death to trace the mighty power of the tunnel. "Thank you, Your Highness. Thank you, Tao Ancestor." After receiving the pagoda, Feng Zichen said excitedly, "This Dharma treasure was in the hands of Tao Ancestor Hongjun. After going through it, all the hidden dangers were gone. It could be used normally. He no longer had to worry about demon ancestor Raha's plot. Moreover, the power of the pagoda was close to that of a Khanate cardinal treasure. It was not weaker than any Khanate spirit treasure. It could be connected to the origin of death and had a trace of primordial chaos Tao runes. It was a rare supreme treasure in the primordial world. With this pagoda in hand, Daluo Jinshin's chances of breaking through to the primordial chaos realm were higher than others. Anyone who obtained this pagoda would be excited. This matter is over. I should leave. With that said, Nuwa waved her hand and scattered boundless creation aura. It enveloped the entire North Sea, bathing all the living beings in North Sea in the creation aura. After all, they had come in the name of saving the living beings in North Sea. It was not right to leave without giving them some benefits. Therefore, Nuwa scattered the creation aura to raise the foundation of the living beings in North Sea to understand the karma of this matter. Also, you should know that the heavenly courts is not a good place. Do not form a karma with them. Before leaving, Nuwa suddenly reminded Feng Zichen. With that, her figure disappeared and returned to Nuwa Palace. "Farewell, Your Majesty." Looking in the direction Nuwa left, Feng Zichen said with some envy, "A sage could reach any place in the untainted land with just a thought. It was really enviable. The heavenly courts. I'm not sick. Why would I go there to court death?" At this time, Di Jun might have the intention of recruiting him. However, when the untainted land geomancy map appeared and the wizard tribe's strength increased greatly, Di Jun would tear him apart. Running to the heavenly courts now was equivalent to sitting at the mouth of a volcano that could erupt at any time. Perhaps in the next moment he would be doomed eternally. After bowing to the North Pole, Feng Zichen turned and flew toward the chaos outside the sky. That was the chaos that belonged to the untainted land. Although it was also full of danger, it was many times safer than the chaos outside the world. Daluo Jinxian entered it. As long as he was careful, he would not encounter the danger of dying. This time, Feng Zichen even borrowed the Khanate supreme treasure, the cauldron of heaven and earth. The treasure he refined was definitely beyond imagination. It was bound to alarm the entire untainted land. In order to avoid attracting the attention of outsiders, the chaos outside the sky was the safest. No matter what he did, the impact on the untainted land would be minimal. Boom! Arriving in the sky, Foam Zeechin suddenly moved. A terrifying power erupted from his body, shattering the endless void and opening a passage that led directly to the chaos outside the sky. This energy wasn't magic power, nor was it the energy of the great Tao. It was purely the energy of the physical body. If an outsider were to see this scene, they would definitely be extremely shocked. After the 6 sages appeared, the space-time of the untainted land became abnormally stable and could not be easily shaken. Only Daluo Jingxian could use the power of the Great Path to shatter the void. Foam Zeechin could shatter the void with just the power of his physical body. It was enough to show his strength. If he used the power of the Great Path, it would be terrible. Using strength to prove one's Tao was so powerful. The aura of chaos here is much more docile than that of the great chaos outside the realm. It was Foam Zeechin's first time in the chaos outside the sky. There was still some difference between what he saw and what he thought. In his opinion, the chaos outside the sky that made even Daluo Jingxian feel a sense of danger should not have the scene of destruction, but it should have ups and downs, stirring up endless waves of chaos and surging violently. Unfortunately, although the aura of chaos here was rolling endlessly and there were earth, fire, water, and wind, the power was too weak. It was far less magnificent than the great chaos outside the realm. It hit his body lazily. Not only did it not make Foam Zeechin feel uncomfortable, but it made him feel abnormally comfortable. Awesome! After taking a breath of the aura of chaos, Foam Zeechin felt comfortable all over and could not help but moan. Then he found a place and sat down cross-legged to sense the heavenly path space. Fortunately, the chaos here was located in the untainted land. It was not like the great chaos outside the realm, where there was no concept of space-time. Foam Zeechin's spiritual sense connected with the heavenly path space without any hindrance. Heavenly path space, open! A purple light flashed between his eyebrows. Foam Zeechin's connate, indestructible true spirit took a step out of the school of the Emperor Star, left his body, crossed the boundless void, and arrived at the 36th level of the heavenly path space. Rumble! The connate sword Tao automatically appeared and turned into 365 connate runes. They constantly alternated, giving birth to endless runes that covered the entire heavenly path space. Chapter 234. From the 39th floor to the first floor, the entire 39th floor of the heavenly Tao space was covered with connate runes. They were densely packed and innumerable. With a buzzing sound, the connate runes suddenly disappeared and were imprinted in the heavenly Tao space. Then, specks of light appeared and gradually gathered into a ball in the air. It was shaped like a fruit and was dazzling. Connate Tao runes filled the air. It was a Tao fruit, the Daluo Tao fruit that belonged to the connate sword Tao. As soon as the Daluo Tao fruit appeared, it fell into Foam Zeechin's body, causing his aura to soar by a small margin. At this time, Foam Zeechin could be considered as the Daluo Jingxian that truly belonged to the primordial world. Previously, he had only established the connate sword Tao and did not use it to prove his Tao. The Daluo power in his body came from the Tao of the stars. It was the Tao of the chaos, not the Tao of the primordial world. Now that the Daluo Tao fruit had entered his body, Foam Zeechin could be considered to have proven the connate sword Tao. He had truly cultivated the Daluo Jingxian in the primordial world and was immortal. This is considered the second time I've proven my Tao. Feeling the skyrocketing power in his body, Foam Zeechin muttered to himself. First, he had proven the Tao of the stars in the great chaos of the outer realm. Now he had proven the connate Sword Tao in the primordial world. In total, he had done it twice. Soon, Feng Zichen would try to prove the Tao of the connate 5 elements. In that case, he would have proven his Tao 3 times. His strength would definitely be greatly improved. In the competition between Daluo Jingxian, it was no longer important whether one's Dharma power was strong or not. They mainly relied on the power of their own great Tao. They used their own great Tao to affect the rules of heaven and earth and erupt with destructive power. Therefore, the more great Taoists they proved, the greater their influence on the rules of heaven and earth and the stronger the power they could mobilize. At the same time, it was also difficult to kill the Daluo Jingxian who had proven his Tao many times. This was because they had left imprints on too many great paths. Only by erasing these imprints, one by one, could they fall. After stabilizing his cultivation, Feng Zichen passed through the heavenly Tao space and arrived on the North Star. In the next moment, Feng Zichen's innate, indestructible true spirit flashed and returned to the Ziwei Tao fetus. The Ziwei Tao fetus was Feng Zichen's true foundation. Now that his great Tao had been formed, he needed to return to the Tao fetus to avoid any accidents. The true spirit returned to its original position. Instantly, boundless Taoist rhymes gushed out of its body and merged with the Ziwei Taoist fetus. Gradually, the structure of the Ziwei Taoist fetus was transformed into the Pangu Taoist fetus. At the same time, in between Feng Zichen's eyebrows, the Zichen seal bestowed by the great Tao was also glowing. It was filled with Taoist rhymes and exuded an indescribable power. The purple light was sparkling as if it had merged with the starry sky. It was collecting the information that Pangu had dissipated here and transmitting it to the Ziwei Tao fetus, accelerating its transformation into the Pangu Tao fetus. In this way, when the Ziwei Tao fetus was completely mature, the innate divine being born, the Ziwei the Great would no longer be the starry Tao body, but the Pangu Tao body. It could be called the Daluo Jingxian realm, the strongest physical body. The Ziwei star was formed from the Panga's ancestral aperture. It has infinite creation. The ancestral aperture is the foundation of a human being. It is the residence of one's God. And the God of Pangu, long before Panga's body transformed into all things, it had merged with the will of the primitive world and turned into the heavenly Tao. In other words, the Ziwei star is the foundation of Pangu. It is the place where his God is, the former residence of the heavenly Tao, and also the place where he was born. In this way, if the innate divine being born from the Ziwei star is not the authentic Pangu, who else can be called the authentic Pangu? Thinking of the origin of the Ziwei star, Feng Zichen could not help but feel a little excited. Although his human body was also the Pangu Tao body, it also had its flaws. That was, the human body was born postnatal and had no blood relationship with the Pangu. At this time, the primordial world was still based on birth and bloodline. Feng Zichen's birth made his identity as the authentic Pangu seem a little unjustified. It was inevitable that it would cause criticism. However, the Ziwei Tao fetus was different. He who was born in the Ziwei star was of the same origin as the heavenly Tao. He was the incarnation of the god of Pangu. His identity was even nobler than the 3 pure ones and the 12 ancestral shamans. He was the most authentic direct descendant of the Pangu in the primordial world. Otherwise, how could the great emperor of Ziwei command the stars, dominate the universe, control the laws of heaven and earth, control the life and death of the netherworld? He ruled the stars, controlled all laws, and ruled Fengdu. He was the symbol of all emperors and the most noble existence in the primordial world. It was also because of this that, in the legends of later generations, there was no innate divine being born on the Ziwei star. How could the heavenly Tao allow such a heaven-defying existence to be born? Feng Zichen came. He who had accidentally connected with the Ziwei star prompted the Ziwei star to give birth to the Ziwei Tao fetus and obtain this heaven-defying opportunity. The heavenly Tao could not stop the birth of the Ziwei Tao fetus. No matter how heaven-defying he was still in existence of the same origin as the heavenly Tao. Therefore, the heavenly Tao could only stop the Ziwei star from giving birth to the innate Tao fetus. It could not destroy the innate Tao fetus that had already been born. Not only that, after the birth of the great emperor of Ziwei, the heavenly Tao had to give him the greatest glory of the primordial world. It had to let everything in the world celebrate and bless his birth. The great emperor of Ziwei is already extraordinary. Now he has obtained so many insights from Panga's Tao body. When he is truly born, it won't be an exaggeration to say that he will be called Little Pango. In the Ziwei Tao fetus, Feng Zichen felt the changes in his body and was pleasantly surprised. In terms of essence, the innate divine being born in the Ziwei star was the closest to Pangu. No one in the primordial world could compare to it. At this moment, he had the help of Panga's Tao runes. Its intrinsic quality had improved a little. He really did not know how powerful he would be after he was born. All right, it's time to get down to business. 300 years later, Feng Zichen woke up from comprehending the changes in the Ziwei Tao fetus. With a thought, the human body sitting cross-legged in the chaos outside the sky suddenly emitted a bright divine light and spread out the chaotic aura for thousands of miles. In an instant, the illusory, true spirit returned. Feng Zichen's thought descended again, and the human body stood up again. Freedom is still the best. It's too boring to stay in the Ziwei Tao fetus. Feng Zichen sighed as he stretched his limbs. As long as Dijun was alive, the Ziwei Tao fetus could not be born. It could only stay on the Ziwei star and wait for the opportunity. How troublesome! With a sigh, Feng Zichen put these troubles behind him. He took out the cauldron of heaven and earth and planned to refine a magic treasure. This time, what he wanted to refine was not an ordinary magic treasure, nor was it an innate spirit treasure. It was a status. The status that belonged to the human race, the status of the human emperor. It gathered the destiny of the human race, firm beliefs, and the spirit of self-improvement into one. It shook the human path in the unseen world, forcing him to descend and activate the cauldron of heaven and earth with all his might. He wanted to merge the three into one. Chapter 235. The development of the human race had already reached a bottleneck. Only by giving birth to an emperor who could command everything of the human race, lead the human race to the untainted land, and compete with all races for hegemony, could they take another step forward. However, the current untainted land was the most prosperous and dazzling era. There were as many Daluo Jinxian as there were stars in the sky. Sage-to-be mighty figures were all over the untainted land, and all kinds of powerful figures had gathered to suppress the universe. Even the saints did not dare to call themselves invincible. In this era where there were many strong people, Daluo Jinxian's strength was not enough. He was not qualified to call himself an emperor. At the very least, he had to be a sage-to-be expert. With Daluo Jinxian's realm, it was more than enough to call himself an emperor in the future. But at this time, if this matter was spread out, it would definitely make people laugh. Feng Zichen and the human race would also become the laughingstock of the untainted land. He, of course, was unwilling. Therefore, Feng Zichen borrowed the innate cardinal treasure cauldron of heaven and earth from Nuwa, and wanted to create a sage-to-be human emperor. Of course, the current luck of the human race was far from the level of the future, which covered the entire untainted land. With its current power, it could only support a Daluo Jinxian level expert for the human race. If he wanted to go further and become a sage-to-be expert, the luck of the human race would be powerless. However, Feng Zichen was not worried about this at all. Not enough luck? Don't worry, merit will make up for it. Now, Feng Zichen did not lack Xianhuang merit. He, who had a body of merit, had some surplus, even if he created a top-grade, postnatal cardinal treasure like the merit spiritual light. What's more, After establishing the innate sword principle, the heavenly Tao gave him endless merit. In this way, Feng Zichen had an incredible amount of Xianhuang merit. If he refined all these merit, it would not be difficult for him to reach the late stage of the sage-to-be realm, let alone the sage-to-be realm, using the heaven and earth merit combined with the destiny of the human race, coupled with the many treasures on his body, the mighty power of the human path as the fire, and the chi of origin as the fuel. In the innate cardinal treasure cauldron of heaven and earth, he created a human emperor comparable to a pre-saint. This was Feng Zichen's plan. At that time, Nuwa asked him what he wanted, and he almost blurted out that he wanted the innate Taiyin origin. However, from the corner of his eyes, he saw the merit aura behind him. At that time, this bold idea suddenly and uncontrollably appeared in his heart, and it became more and more intense. He could not help but change his words and borrow the cauldron of heaven and earth. Since the merits were useless to him, why not use them to refine a status comparable to that of a sage-to-be and pass it on to the next generation of the human race and protect the human race? With the status of a quasi-saint, no matter how the situation fluctuated, the human race would always have a quasi-saint overseeing it. They might not be able to dominate the primordial world. However, there was absolutely no problem in defending one side. A quasi-sage, placed in any era, would be an overlord. Ha! With a deep snort, Feng Zichen forced the fate of the human race out of his body. Immediately, a ball of Exanhua, shrouded in 5-colored light, appeared beside him. It shone with divine light and emitted a shocking power. Go! Pointing at Exanhua, Feng Zichen threw it into the cauldron of heaven and earth. Then he waved his hand and suddenly grabbed in front of him. The void shattered and wisps of light appeared, surging towards him with the prayers of all living beings. This was the power of incense, which contained the good wishes of countless clansmen for the human race. Since the birth of the human race, it had always existed and could be said to be endless. Now, Feng Zichen took it and used it as the main material to refine the human emperor's status. After taking the power of incense, Feng Zichen calmed his mind and activated the power of Sword Tao with all his strength, forcefully shaking the long river of destiny. Rumble! After a loud bang, the long river of destiny that had been calm for a long time changed again. The entire river was shaking violently, setting off boundless waves, each higher than the last. Who knew how many people's destinies were disturbed, changing their destinies? Suddenly, in the depths of the long river of destiny, a small tributary appeared, emitting a hazy white light. It was not dazzling, but warm and gentle, slowly flowing to an unknown place. That was the river of destiny that belonged to the human race. It was one of the countless tributaries of the long river of destiny, the destiny of all the humans gathered here. Out! A majestic divine sense surged out and slammed into the tributary. The river water flew up, and a grand spirit appeared. That spirit was vigorous and exuded the belief of self-improvement, shaking one's heart. It was the immortal belief and indestructible spirit of the human race. As soon as it appeared, it leaped high from the long river of destiny, crossed the boundless void, and surged into the cauldron of heaven and earth. Boom, boom, boom. The fate of the human race, the power of incense, and the spirit of the human race gathered in the cauldron of heaven and earth, entangling and fusing with each other, producing a strange power. From there, it broke the seal of the cauldron of heaven and earth and spread into the chaos beyond the heavens. As if shaking the universe, the chaos beyond the heavens trembled. The light of the human path flickered, and a mighty force appeared out of thin air and exploded, turning into a raging fire that burned toward the cauldron of heaven and earth. This was the fire of the human path. Great! Seeing this, Feng Zichen was excited. He hurriedly took off the merit on his back and sent it all into the cauldron of heaven and earth. Then, with a flip of his hand, he took out the merit light and crushed it, sending it into the cauldron of heaven and earth. To Feng Zichen, his strongest defensive means in the past, the merit light had long been useless. It was useless to keep it in his hands. It was better to integrate it into the human emperor's position to strengthen his power. Clang! Under the burning of the human path fire, even the cauldron of heaven and earth was trembling. The power of creation gushed out endlessly, as if it was going to recreate the universe and the world. Under the pressure of the power of creation, the four tangible and intangible forces gathered into a ball and compressed continuously. Gradually, they took on a physical form and revealed the aura of the human path. It's not enough. Seeing the change in the destiny of the human race, Feng Zichen frowned in dissatisfaction. Then, as if he had thought of something, he reached out his hand and grabbed toward the ancestral land of the human race. In the sky above the ancestral temple of the human race, there was a purple-gold, divine dragon bathed in the Z-Way starlight. It was constantly devouring the dragon chi in all directions and slowly growing. This was the Emperor's chi, the fusion of the dragon vein chi and the Z-Way starlight. It was the strongest power in the world that could isolate all Daos, obliterate mana, and destroy all supernatural powers. As an emperor, he should be as brilliant as the sun and have supreme majesty. How could he not have the emperor's chi? Therefore, thinking of this, Feng Zichen moved. He took action from the chaos beyond the heavens and captured the emperor's chi, sending it into the human emperor's position that was about to take shape. On the Z-Way star, Feng Zichen's innate, indestructible, true spirit forcefully separated a part of the origin of the Z-Way star and sent it into the cauldron of heaven and earth. Chapter 236. The Z-Way star's origin could also be called the Emperor's origin. It was the carrier of the Tao of the innate Emperor. Boom! 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 As the Z-Way star's origin fused, the fluctuations from the cauldron of heaven and earth became even stronger as it trembled violently. The power of creation surged out, erupting with sparkling white light that illuminated the entire cauldron. Through the walls of the cauldron, one could clearly see the human emperor's position that had been dyed golden by the Xianhuang merit earlier. At this moment, under the influence of the Z-Way star's origin, it was gradually dyed with a hint of purple, transforming into a purplish gold color. At the same time, the emperor purple chi that the human race had nurtured for many years turned back into a five-clawed divine dragon that circled around the human emperor's position. And under the influence of its aura, this divine dragon also underwent a change. The dragon's aura on its body became stronger, revealing its noble appearance. There was a faint trend of metamorphosis, as if it was about to transform into a nine-clawed divine dragon. Not enough. With a low voice, Feng Zichen took out the chaos bead, summoned the great Tao divine diagram, and spread out the chaos formation. It absorbed all the chaos chi from all directions and poured it into the human emperor's position. Then a mysterious yellow light bloomed on its body, constantly surging and flying into the cauldron of heaven and earth. That was the Xianhuang Mother Chi, also known as the origin of heaven and earth. It was a treasure that Feng Zichen had obtained from the ancient ruins. At the same time, the Buddha pagoda also flew out from Feng Zichen's body. It also spewed out Xianhuang Mother Chi, and it was twice as much as Feng Zichen's. At that time, the ancient ruins were about to be destroyed, and the Xianhuang Mother Chi was born. Feng Zichen, Xing Tian, World Devastator Taoist, and the others each obtained 10% of the Xianhuang Mother Chi. Only the Buddha pagoda obtained 20% of the Xianhuang Mother Chi by chance. It could be said to be the best among them. Now, it was all taken out by Feng Zichen to strengthen the power of the human emperor's position. Boom! Boom! The mighty power of the human Tao that descended from the unseen became stronger and stronger. Terrifying power overflowed. Even the chaos was distorting. Under this power, the power of the cauldron of heaven and earth was completely stimulated. It was like a world had been reopened, and it was about to create the universe. Earth, fire, water, and wind surged and formed the energy of the world. Immediately, the chaotic chi that was surging over was divided into the purest, innate chi of creation. It carried endless Taoist rhymes as it surged toward the human emperor's position. If he wanted to use the supreme ability of the cauldron of heaven and earth, he would be able to revert to Xiantian. Unfortunately, the position of the human emperor was too extraordinary. If it was converted into a spiritual treasure, it would not be weaker than any supreme-grade innate spiritual treasure. Although the cauldron of heaven and earth was powerful, it couldn't refine a supreme-grade innate spiritual treasure created by heaven and earth. Therefore, even though there were waves of connate spiritual light, endless Taoist rhymes, and even connate runes on the human emperor's body, it couldn't complete the final transformation and become a connate object. Pre-celestial and post-celestial were only 2 words apart, but they were as different as heaven and earth. Natural treasures were created by the grand Tao and nurtured by the heavens and the earth, and they possessed indestructible characteristics. Even if it was broken, it would repair itself one day. However, things were different for acquired items. As a human-made treasure, if it was broken, it would be broken. Unless the owner spent a lot of treasures to reconstruct it, it would be impossible for it to repair itself. In other words, Feng Zichen spent a lot of peerless treasures to refine the human emperor's position. If it was broken in a great battle, it would be completely destroyed. If he wanted to condense the human emperor's position again, he would have to refine it again. The other treasures were easy to find. He could still find them with some effort. However, the Xianhuang source qi was the only layer left in the world. It couldn't be found anymore. Therefore, the human emperor's position had to be recognized by heaven and earth and become a connate object. Otherwise, it wouldn't mean much to the human race. If he was careless, the human emperor's position would be damaged. It would be an unbearable pain. Tree of World, refine. Summoning the Tree of World from the chaos bead, Feng Zichen placed it above the cauldron of heaven and earth and used the origin power of the Tree of World to strengthen the cauldron of heaven and earth. The Tree of World was a chaos spiritual root. If it was refined into a spiritual treasure, it would be a chaos supreme treasure. If it transformed into a human form, it would be a chaos demon god. Even if such a supreme spiritual object hadn't grown to its peak, it still had incredible power, especially the Tree of World, which contained the power to open up a realm. That realm wasn't the upper-class world, but the more powerful, chaotic world. It was a world second only to the untainted land. It had great creation and great opportunities. In terms of going against the connate, it was much better than the cauldron of heaven and earth. Not to mention supreme-grade connate spiritual treasures. It could even nurture rare connate supreme treasures in the untainted land. Moreover, the Tree of World was a chaos spiritual root. The rules of the untainted land couldn't restrict it. There was no limit to the number of times it could refine connate spiritual treasures. As long as it had enough connate origin, it could refine as many as it wanted. It was far from comparable to the cauldron of heaven and earth. Unfortunately, the Tree of World hadn't grown to perfection. Its ability was far less powerful than the legend said. Even so, it might not be much weaker than the cauldron of heaven and earth in going against the connate. The Tree of World and the cauldron of heaven and earth alone might not be able to refine supreme-grade connate spiritual treasures, but the two work together with the power of merit and the Xianhuang Mother Qi. The birth of the human emperor must be a connate object. It could blend with heaven and earth and become a status derived from the Tao of heaven and earth. It was indestructible and had incredible power. Whoosh! The origin of the world fell from the roots of the Tree of World like a waterfall and landed on the cauldron of heaven and earth below. At this moment, the cauldron of heaven and earth completely changed. Bright green light burst out, and countless Khanate runes flew out, covering thousands of miles of chaos. Everything in the surroundings was fixed. The rules were distorted and cognition was changed. The thousands of miles of chaos turned into a world of heaven and earth. It seemed to be only thousands of miles in size, but it was also vast and boundless. As the saying goes, a mountain contains a mustard seed, and a mustard seed contains a mountain. This was it. The world was vast, with the division of heaven and earth and the derivation of rules. Earth, fire, water, and wind raged endlessly. The 5 elements cycled back and forth, showing the beauty of the world and giving birth to endless creation. In the center of the world of heaven and earth, the human emperor's status floated there quietly, accepting the refinement of the world's rules and the baptism of endless creation. Taoist rhymes surrounded his body, and Khanate's spiritual light shone brightly. Vast divine power spread out, gradually transforming into Khanate, and immortal Tao light shone. Emperor, great beginning. The word emperor in the Khanate godly text looked like a sun, symbolizing glory and brilliance. This was also the reason why Jun was born as the emperor. The word Huang in the human clan was like a burning lamp, representing the eternal life of the human clan. It also represented that swear-in drilled wood to make fire, lighting the fire of the human race's civilization, making the human race wise and having a heritage. To the human race, mastering fire was no less than splitting heaven and earth. Therefore, Feng Zichen created the word emperor with this as the core. Emperor Sui built fire for the human race, eternal. Chapter 237. The title of emperor was not something an ordinary person could bear. Those who did not have the destiny to call themselves emperor were bound to suffer. Feng Zichen was born with the destiny of Ziwei. He had the destiny of the celestial emperor. He was a treasure of the soul and the master of the stars. He had great merit for both the human race and the untainted land. With his identity, he could even sit on the throne of the celestial emperor, the master of the untainted land, not to mention the title of emperor. Speaking of which, the current strength of the human race was not ranked in the untainted land. It was not enough to be taken seriously by the innate races. If Feng Zichen became the emperor, he would be wronged in the eyes of the great beings. The current human race was not worthy of Feng Zichen's identity. How could a small post-celestial race be able to support a dignified Pango, the sword ancestor of the untainted land, a supreme figure with great wisdom, merit, and perseverance? Feng Zichen's world was in the boundless, untainted land. Back then, when Kuan Peng persuaded Feng Zichen to join the heavenly court, he had hinted that as long as he was willing to join the heavenly court, the positions of the 9 heavenly masters would be vacant. This was not a joke. If Feng Zichen really agreed to join the heavenly court, Jun, Tai, Fushi, and the others would definitely appear together with the heavenly cycle demon gods. They would personally welcome him into the heavenly court with the highest etiquette outside the southern heavenly gate to show that they valued him. The remaining 5 positions of the heavenly masters would be up to Feng Zichen to choose at will. If Jun was stingy with the position of the heavenly master, he would casually arrange an idle position for Feng Zichen. Before Feng Zichen could say anything, the great beings of the untainted land would not be able to stand it anymore and would criticize Jun. After all, his identity was different now. He was no longer a post-celestial life form that was inferior to ants. Instead, he was the true descendant of the Pango, an innate saint. He had become a member of the great beings and was incomparably noble. No one in this world could look down on him, let alone humiliate him. Otherwise, the heavens and earth would definitely sense it and erase one's luck and fortune as punishment. The heaven realm was composed of 9 heavens. According to the distribution of the 9 palaces, the size of each heaven was countless times larger than the great thousand world. It could be said to be vast and boundless. By controlling a greater thousand world, one could immediately become Daluo Jinxian. If one were to become the Sky Master, one would be able to completely control the source of the sky. His strength would then rise to the level of a great perfection demi-saint. Compared to the current position of human emperor, it was much stronger. Therefore, if the great mediums in the untainted land knew that Feng Zichen had become the human emperor, they would definitely sigh in their hearts and feel that the human tribe had delayed him. After all, the providence of the Khanate Sword Dao, the God-Fiend Dao, the Panga's authentic providence, and the World Tree's providence. Feng Zichen's luck alone had already surpassed the luck of the entire human race. As the human emperor, not only did he not gain any benefits, but he also gave his luck to the human race, making the human race stronger. Wasn't this sacrificing himself to help the human race? The purpose of developing one's power was to gather the providence of heaven and earth so that one's cultivation could improve quickly. If one was implicated by the power, it would affect one's cultivation. It was better not to have this power. Di Jun, Tai, and the 12 ancestral sorcerers could not see this clearly. That was why they were implicated by the shamans and demons. They could not escape in time and were forced to launch the Great Shaman War, causing them to die one after another. Now, Feng Zichen also could not see this clearly. He wanted to use his own luck to replenish the luck of the human tribe. In the eyes of the great mediums, this was extremely stupid. Luck was the supreme treasure of the untainted land and the fuse of the great calamity. Everyone wanted it, but could not get it. No one would think that it was too much. They would only feel that it was not enough. Feng Zichen did the opposite. How could he not be stupid? Of course, this was only the thought of the great mediums. Feng Zichen was naturally not stupid. Now he had too much luck. He was about to reach the point where things would reverse when they reached an extreme. Once the heavenly Tao changed, the universe would reverse. In an instant, his monstrous providence would turn into a fatal talisman and summon countless calamities, causing him to be in danger of dying at any time. Not only could he end the karma between him and the human tribe, but he could also deepen his influence on the human tribe and increase their strength. It could be said to be killing 3 birds with 1 stone. The increase in the luck of the human tribe would naturally produce more experts, causing the human tribe to be stronger and have a deeper foundation. If he increased the luck of the human tribe, he would definitely be grateful. It would allow Feng Zichen's influence on him to expand further. Perhaps he could not see anything now, but when the human tribe became the main character of the world in the future, their luck would increase exponentially. The benefits that Feng Zichen would obtain would be immeasurable. When Feng Zichen was crowned emperor, his position in the human tribe would not only be completely stable, but it would also be unprecedentedly improved. His divine appearance would be forever engraved in the destiny of the human tribe and witness the rise and fall of the human tribe together. His status would surpass Swerin in one fell swoop and reach the level of Niwa. At that time, if the saint wanted to control the destiny of the human tribe again, he would definitely not be able to bypass Feng Zichen. He would have to obtain his consent first before he could order the human tribe around. Otherwise, if the saint forcefully interfered in the affairs of the human tribe without his consent, other than Niwa, he would form karma with him. Karma had to be repaid. More importantly, Feng Zichen had temporarily obtained the power of the Daluo Jinxian with the help of the human tribe's destiny and formed karma with him. After this incident, the karma between him and the human tribe was completely ended. It could be said that he had removed a burden from his mind. One had to know that only by truly achieving the primordial chaos and making himself flawless, he would be able to end all karma and be at ease. Only then could he break free from the river of time and space in one fell swoop and become the primordial chaos Daluo Jinxian. Logically speaking, this was something that only a sage-to-be would consider. Feng Zichin was only a Daluo Jinxian and was not qualified to consider this. However, he was a Daluo Jinxian who had attained the Tao in the great chaos outside the realm, so he did not reach the sage-to-be realm. After the Daluo realm, it was the primordial chaos Tao realm. Now he needed to make early preparations for breaking through to the primordial chaos Tao realm. Speaking of which, Hong Jun was indeed a Tao ancestor. He relied on the primordial chaos world to establish the sage-to-be realm. It was a transitional stage for Daluo Jinxian to reach the primordial chaos Tao realm. It was extremely mysterious. Compared to Daluo Jinxian, it was undoubtedly much easier to break through to the primordial chaos Tao realm and become a sage-to-be before breaking through. Based on this point alone, Hong Jun deserved the title of Tao ancestor. After an unknown period of time, hundreds of millions of purple gold rays of light suddenly burst out from the cauldron of heaven and earth, illuminating the chaos into a purple gold color. It was extremely magical. Rumble. At this moment, in the depths of the chaos, endless Tao runes appeared and surged towards this place, entering the cauldron of heaven and earth. The heavenly Tao was about to be born, so it specially sent down a force to help him complete the final transformation and completely become a connate object. Chapter 238. Feng Zichin's many treasures were not wasted in the end. The heavenly axiom had already recognized the position of the human emperor. From now on, he was a position created by the heavens and earth. He contained supreme creation and was indestructible. Boom! After a loud bang, all the phenomena disappeared. The universe, world that covered thousands of miles, turned back into the small cauldron of heaven and earth. On the spot, 1 big and 9 small balls of light appeared. There were a total of 10 bright balls of light. The big one was purplish gold in color. It was surrounded by the great Tao and the birth and death of laws. There was a faint 9-clawed, divine dragon swimming inside. It had great majesty and aura. The vast emperor's might suppressed the primordial world. On his body, one could see the myriad phenomena of the human race, the myriad scenes of the mortal world, and the changes of living beings. This was the position of the human emperor. If one obtained it, they would be the human emperor, the emperor of the human race. The small one was dazzling with golden light and surrounded by Tao runes. A 5-clawed golden dragon was faintly discernible in it, as if it had merged with the void. This was the position of the human king. If the human emperor did not appear, the human king would be revered. If one obtained this position, they would be the human king. They would be the leader of the human race and the leader of everyone. They would control the vast territory and assist the human emperor in governing the human race. They would be revered in the world. Now, Feng Zichin's position as the leader of the human race was equivalent to the human king. Although he was revered by the human race, his foundation was insufficient. He could only borrow the power of the human race and could not completely control it. At this moment, it was different. Feng Zichin was going to take a step forward and ascend to the throne. He would integrate all the power of the human race and firmly control it in his hands, leading the human race to glory. 1 emperor and 9 kings. Is this the will of the heavens? However, this is also good. With 1 person as the leader and 9 as the support, the overall structure of the human race will be more stable. It will be beneficial for the development of the human race. Looking at the 10 balls of light in front of him, Feng Zichin naturally understood what had happened. If he refined the human emperor's position himself, it would naturally follow his will. It would be as smooth as one and would not disperse the power. However, in order to make the human emperor's position a connate object, Feng Zichen attracted the power of heaven and earth. As a result, the refinement of the human emperor's position was completely controlled by the heavens and the earth, changing according to his will. Feng Zichen, the original owner, was kicked out and couldn't do anything. This led to the birth of the position of Renhuang, with 1 master and 9 assistants. Otherwise, according to Feng Zichen's original intention, of course, he would only cultivate the position of Renhuang in order to maximize his power. In the end, the considerations of the heavenly Tao are more comprehensive than mine. So be it. Both methods had their advantages and disadvantages. It was hard to say which was better or worse. However, such a situation was created by the heavenly Tao and could not be changed. Feng Zichen could not say that the heavenly Tao was not good. Moreover, perhaps the heavenly Tao's thoughts were more beneficial to the development of the human race. After all, the way of heaven was far beyond what Feng Zichen could compare to. His thoughts were not something that he could compare to. Human sovereign. He reached out and held the position of Renhuang in his hand. Feeling the powerful power coming from it, Feng Zichen was a little excited. After refining it, he could stand at the peak of the human race and become the emperor respected by tens of thousands of people. This was the human sovereign. It was related to the rise and fall of the human race and the life and death of tens of thousands of people. It could be said to be extremely glorious. Who didn't want to ascend to this position? Feng Zichen was no exception. Without the slightest hesitation, Feng Zichen operated his cultivation method with all his strength. Suddenly, a majestic power surged out and wrapped the position of Renhuang in layers, refining it. In the face of Feng Zichen's refinement, the position of Renhuang did not resist at all. Instead, it took the initiative to let go of everything and let him refine it. It was originally refined by Feng Zichen. The position of Renhuang was naturally close to him, so how could it resist him? Not long after, the position of Renhuang was completely refined by him. In an instant, a powerful force rose from Feng Zichen's body, stirring up endless wind and clouds. A terrifying force spread, setting off a huge tide of chaos in the chaos beyond the sky. At this moment, Feng Zichen felt an incomparable force rising in his body, making him extremely powerful. It was as if he had broken free from everything and was rising infinitely. This was the power of a quasi-sage expert. Rumble! A vast river appeared in front of his eyes. It was vast and boundless, and it surged forward without stopping. This was not the river of destiny, but the most mysterious and dangerous river of time and space in the primordial world. Under the suppression of Mount Buzhou, the river of time and space that should have been free for Daluo Jingxian to roam became extremely dangerous. No one was allowed to set foot in it. No, it was not that no one was allowed to set foot in it. When a quasi-sage expert broke through, the river of time and space would descend, allowing them to collect their past, present, and future bodies. Panga had great love. Therefore, in order to protect the stability of the primordial world, he set restrictions and did not allow anyone to interfere with the river of time and space. However, the path of Tao was difficult for all living beings. How could Panga stop all living beings from advancing? Therefore, every time a quasi-sage expert broke through, the river of time and space would automatically appear in front of him to help him break through. It was only at this time that the river of time and space was safe. When one stepped into it, they would not be suppressed by Mount Buzhou and could see the secrets of the depths of time and space. Now, with the help of the position of Renhuang, Feng Zichen's cultivation level had risen all the way to the late stage of the quasi-sage realm. He summoned the river of time and space from the unseen world, wanting to collect his past and present bodies. Unfortunately, his cultivation level was promoted by external forces. Although his realm and strength were at the late stage of the quasi-sage realm, a fake was still a fake. He could not completely erase his past and present in the river of time and space, like a true, late-stage, quasi-sage expert. However, even so, Feng Zichen was still very satisfied. Whether or not he collected his past and present did not affect him much. Because Mount Buzhou was there, no one could interfere with the river of time and space. It was enough for him to have enough strength. Only strength was the foundation of everything. In this way, I can unleash the strength of a perfected quasi-sage. After adapting to his strength, Feng Zichen said excitedly, "That's right. It was either the late stage of the quasi-sage realm or the perfected quasi-sage realm." Feng Zichen was the Daluo Jingxian who had attained Tao in the great chaos outside the realm. Therefore, he had no future in the primordial world. He who was in the late stage of the quasi-sage realm was equivalent to a perfected quasi-sage. Of course, this method was a bit of a trick. It made his strength far weaker than a true perfected quasi-sage expert. However, his realm was there. No matter how weak he was still stronger than the late stage of the quasi-sage realm. At this moment, Feng Zichen was the top great divine ability of the primordial world, second only to Kun Peng, Jin Yuanzi, and the others. However, while attaining Tao in the chaos gave him great benefits, it also brought him a lot of trouble. In the primordial world, only by integrating the past, present, and future into one could try to break through to the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. However, Feng Zichen was different. In addition, he had to accumulate boundless magic power and cultivate his great Tao to the limit. Only then could he break through the realm barrier and become the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. Chapter 239. This method seemed extremely simple. As long as he accumulated enough power, he could break through. But how long would this accumulation take? According to normal methods, Feng Zichen might not be able to accumulate enough power to achieve the Tao even when the immeasurable calamity descended. This was the Tao attainment method of the Chaos Fiend God. It was stronger than the Tao attainment method of the primordial world. At the same time, it was more difficult. It was almost impossible to succeed. In this world, there were gains and losses. Feng Zichen had attained the Tao in the chaos outside the realm. He had obtained so many benefits, so he naturally had to pay a higher price. Sigh. Who can tell the difference between gains and losses? With a sigh, Feng Zichen put away his unnecessary thoughts. He suddenly waved his hand in front of him and swept the 9 human king positions, floating in the chaos into the destiny of the human race, allowing them to choose their own masters. Each of these 9 human king positions represented a Daluo Jingxian. In other words, as long as someone could refine them, their strength would definitely rise to the Daluo realm. To any force in the primordial world, the Daluo Jingxian was extremely important. The reason why Swerin, the other 2, and Feng Zichen were able to attain the Daluo Jingxian realm so quickly was that they had great merit and great luck. Their innate origin was extremely rich, which was why they had achieved far more than ordinary people. But ordinary humans didn't have the same opportunity as the 4 of them. Therefore, it was extremely difficult for ordinary humans to break through to the Daluo Jingxian realm. Not to mention a million years, they might not even be able to break through to the Daluo Jingxian realm in their entire lives. Before Feng Zichen and the other 3 in the primordial world, no one could attain the Daluo Jingxian realm in a million years except for the innate god fiends. Therefore, the 9 human king positions were especially important. Even a pig sitting on the throne of the human king and grasping the power of the Daluo Jingxian for a million years would be able to break through to the Daluo Jingxian realm. The human sovereign persona was equivalent to a Daluo Jingxian creation tool. It could continuously create Daluo Jingxian for the human race. Unfortunately, an extraordinary item would only be obtained by an extraordinary person. This human sovereign persona was created by the heavens and earth, and its essence was extraordinary. Not everyone had the qualifications to refine it. Only those who have made great contributions to the human race can obtain it. I wonder if the current human race can produce 9 human monarchs. No, we don't necessarily need 9 supreme martial artists. 6 supreme martial artists are enough. As Feng Zichen looked at the vanishing human king position, he felt somewhat worried. In Feng Zichen's impression, the number of people who were qualified to become human kings could be counted on one hand. It would be somewhat difficult to gather 9 sovereign personages. Fortunately, as the human emperor, Feng Zichen had the power to appoint human kings. However, this action was to forcefully raise the position of others. The price to pay was too great. With Feng Zichen's current strength, forcefully appointing 3 human kings was already the limit. If there were more, it would damage his foundation. The gains would not make up for the losses. Therefore, as long as 6 human kings were chosen for the human king position, Feng Zichen would have the ability to make up for the remaining 3 human kings. The power of the human emperor. How is this possible? After putting away the cauldron of heaven and earth and the tree of world, Feng Zichen was about to return to the human race when he suddenly felt that something was wrong. His magic power was actually slowly disappearing. This gave him a fright. Magic power was the foundation of all magical powers. It could not be lost. At that moment, he did not care about returning to the human race. He hurriedly calmed his mind and checked his body to find the source of the problem. After his divine consciousness circled around his body, Feng Zichen discovered that what was disappearing was not only his magic power, but also his foundation, all the great paths that he had painstakingly cultivated. This discovery made him even more terrified. If his magic power was gone, he could still cultivate it again. However, if his great paths were gone, he would not be far from death. And the culprit that caused all of this was the human emperor position that Feng Zichen had just refined. One could see strands of purple gold divine light falling from the human emperor position, constantly obliterating his magic power and even his great paths. What's going on? Puzzled, Feng Zichen communicated with the way of the heavens, operated the purple star divinator, and calculated in his heart. At this moment, the heavenly favor on his body was very strong, and he was also supported by the power of the way of the heavens. When he deduced the secrets of the heavens, he really had the help of the heavens. In the blink of an eye, Feng Zichen calculated everything about this matter. This matter could be said to be a success and a failure of the imperial purple chi. As the most domineering power in the world, not only could the imperial purple chi obliterate the great paths of others, but it could also obliterate one's own great paths. It was just that this process was relatively slow. With Feng Zichen's strength, Daluo Jingxian might be able to hold on for 1,000,000 years before his great paths were obliterated and he fell into a deep sleep. This was only the human emperor position, and its power was not strong. One could imagine that when the human race became the protagonist of the world in the future, the power of the human emperor position would reach its peak. Not to mention Daluo Jingxian. Even a sage-to-be wouldn't be able to hold on for long. No wonder the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors of the later generations were so strong, but they only stayed in the position of the human emperor for 1,000,000 years before abdicating. So this is the root of it. That's right. Under the threat of the imperial purple chi, continuing to stay in the position of the human emperor will only lead to the obliteration of his great paths. It's better to retire after success and be carefree in the world. After coming back to his senses, Feng Zichen sighed with emotion. The 3 sovereigns of the human race were all sage-to-be figures, and their strength was second only to the saints. Each of the 5 emperors of the human race was no less than a late-stage sage-to-be. Such a powerful figure wanted to sit on the throne of the human emperor. With the luck of the human race on him, who could do anything to him? The 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors could have sat on the throne of the human emperor forever, enjoying the limitless supreme position and dominating the primordial world. However, they abdicated early, which was puzzling. Now it seemed that it was not that they were unwilling, but that they could not. Heavenly path. There's really no room for loopholes. Obviously, this was a restriction set by the heavenly path. The imperial purple chi was so strong that it could be said to be an unsolvable existence. There were very few people in the primordial world who could compare to it. The more heaven-defying something was, the greater the restriction. Therefore, the imperial purple chi had the characteristic of not distinguishing between friend and foe. However, although the imperial purple chi is strong, it's useless to me. After knowing the reason, Feng Zichen immediately thought of a way to deal with it. The Emperor Star was the carrier of the path of the Emperor. With it around, no matter how heaven-defying the imperial purple chi was, it could not hurt it at all. Emperor Star out, Feng Zichen formed a Dao seal and activated the origin of the Emperor Star, casting a shadow in his sea of consciousness. Under the illumination of the Emperor Star, the human emperor's status instantly restrained its power. The imperial purple chi also became extremely obedient and was completely controlled by Feng Zichen. Fortunately, the imperial purple chi was born after the witch and demon calamity. Otherwise, if Di Jun controlled this power, who in the primordial world would be able to match him? Feeling the power of the imperial purple chi, Feng Zichen thought happily. Di Jun was the celestial emperor. He was the lord of all living things in the primordial world and could preach on behalf of the heavens. This was the most noble Dao seat in the primordial world, and nothing could compare to it. Even when the human race was at its strongest, the human emperor was nominally lower than the celestial emperor. Even a saint was not as noble as the celestial emperor in theory. It was just that saints were above him and were not under the control of the celestial emperor. Di Jun was the most qualified existence to control the imperial purple chi in the primordial world. Just thinking about it was terrifying. Di Jun was already at the peak of the primordial world. With the help of the imperial purple chi, how strong would he be? It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was invincible in the world. Chapter 240. Mount Buzhou fell, causing the stars to shift and worship the Emperor Star together. For a time, the Emperor Star's starlight surged and appeared from the boundless starry sky. It replaced the sun and moon and became the new Lord of the Stars. When the Emperor Star appeared, the brilliance that belonged to the Lord of the Stars bloomed for the first time. It illuminated the primordial world, the universe, and the endless space and time. It was also at that moment that the Emperor Star's starlight and the wish power of all spirits interacted. It gathered the power of the 3 paths of heaven, earth, and man and formed the strongest power of the primordial world, the Emperor Purple Chi. The sun and moon hide, and the Emperor Star appears. Di Jun can't get the Emperor Purple Chi. Isn't it the restriction of the heavenly Tao on him? At this moment, Feng Zichen seemed to understand something. The heavenly Tao emphasized balance the most. The heavenly Tao would not allow any force that could dominate the primordial world to appear, for fear that it would break the balance of the primordial world. The celestial sect of wonders was powerful, and the demon sect appeared. The demon clan was powerful, and the wizard clan appeared. The 3 pure ones were powerful, and the Buddhist sect appeared. In short, any powerful force would have all kinds of problems, or the birth of a powerful enemy, or internal division. There were all kinds of reasons. In any case, the force that truly unified the primordial world would not appear. Haha, interesting. I wonder what kind of opponent the heavenly Tao will prepare for the human race after the human race becomes the protagonist of the world to stop the human race from ruling the primordial world. After taking one last look at the depths of the chaos, Feng Zichen tore open the chaos outside the sky and returned to the human race. Feng Zichen firmly believed that the human race would become the true protagonist of the world under his leadership, not the puppet of the saints of the later generations. The ancestral land of the human race, the shore of the East Sea. The moment Feng Zichen became the human emperor, all the human race sensed it. A great throbbing suddenly surged in their hearts, as if a great existence had been born. Then the torrent of destiny of the human race appeared, vast and mighty, covering the shore of the East Sea, forming a majestic emperor's shadow in the sky. It was Feng Zichen. Without any doubts, the moment they saw the emperor's shadow, the people of the human race naturally understood what it was. A surge of excitement from the depths of their hearts made them shout from the bottom of their hearts, "Emperor! Emperor! Emperor!" They understood in their hearts that this was the birth of the emperor of the human race. The human race finally had its own emperor. In the future, under the leadership of the emperor, the human tribe would officially announce its existence to the untainted land. It would enter the magnificent world and write its own glory. It was time for the human race to rise. The loud voices were in unison. First, they spread throughout the entire East Sea. Then, they spread far and wide into the East Sea. Countless aquatic creatures were shocked as they looked in the direction of the human race in shock and confusion. Idiot! In the ancestral dragon's sacred palace, the ancestral dragon's avatar could not help but curse when he saw the huge emperor shadow that enveloped the human clan. His tone was filled with anger. As mentioned before, Feng Zichen becoming Renhuang was a foolish move in the eyes of the great divines. Seeing his choice, the ancestral Gragon was both shocked and angry. At the same time, this also showed how much ancestral Gragon valued Feng Zichen. Otherwise, why would the ancestral dragon lose his composure and ignore him? Crack! Several huge space cracks appeared. Feng Zichen walked out of the void and returned to the ancestral temple of the human race that had been away from for a long time. "Greetings, your majesty!" Seeing Feng Zichen, the surrounding humans hurriedly knelt down and bowed to him. "Emperor, Emperor!" The changes in the ancestral temple immediately attracted everyone's attention. Not long after, all the clansmen knew that Feng Zichen had returned. They all shouted excitedly like a tsunami. At first, there were only a few scattered voices. They were not loud or orderly, but soon the cheers spread to the entire human race. They became louder and louder, more and more orderly. There was a boiling sense of passion which was shocking. Infected by this aura, the flower of humanity above Feng Zichen's head kept trembling, as if it had obtained a connection with the existence of the underworld. Not long after, an inexplicable power appeared in the void. It was vast, boundless, and boundless. It emitted an aura that could contain everything. This was the mighty power of humanity. With the help of the flower of humanity, the shocking power of the human race was transmitted to the human race. It moved him and deliberately lowered a force. Rustle. With the descent of the mighty power of humanity, a ray of light rose above everyone's head. Billions of rays converged toward Feng Zichen, forming a purple-gold crown in the air and wearing it on his head. The crown was covered with connate Tao patterns. Divine light bloomed, and connate vitality fell. It was endless, containing all the vitality in the world and giving birth to endless changes. There were thousands of spirits surrounding it. There were many kinds of spirits, and all the races of the primordial world could be found on it. Unfortunately, except for the human race's figure, which was real, the figures of all the other races were illusory and would shatter with a touch. Connate treasure, myriad spirit crown. When the origin of the purple gold crown appeared in Feng Zichen's heart, he was shocked. Was this a connate treasure? Wasn't it a little too easy? Sigh. I knew it. things aren't as simple as I thought. As more information about the myriad spirit crown was learned by Feng Zichen, the surprise and ecstasy in his heart gradually faded and was replaced by a sense of helplessness. The myriad spirit crown was a supreme treasure that gathered the power of all spirits and combined with connate vitality. It was a connate treasure nurtured by the human race. It contained the Tao of the transformation of connate vitality. With a shake of the crown, Tao light fell, evolving into the connate vitality of the primordial world. It flowed with light and colorful colors, protecting the body. It was so powerful that all evil would retreat and be invulnerable. Moreover, the myriad spirit crown contained the power of all spirits. With this crown, one would be protected by all spirits and have great luck. With a thought, all spirits would appear and fight with their master. Every strand of connate vitality corresponded to a race. The connate vitality combined with the power of all spirits and evolved into a flourishing era of the human race, crushing all existences. This treasure was extremely powerful, second only to the 3 heaven-opening treasures. Unfortunately, the power of the myriad spirit crown was closely related to the power of all spirits in the body. Only when the phantom of all spirits was completely solid could it unleash the power of a connate treasure. But now, only the phantom of the human race had barely solidified on the myriad spirit crown. The other races were just illusory shadows without any power. This also caused the power of the myriad spirit crown to only reach the level of a low-grade connate spirit treasure. It was completely unworthy of its status as a connate treasure. Sai, isn't this forcing me to attack all races and unify the primordial world? If he didn't obtain the recognition of all races, how could he restore the myriad spirit crown to the level of a connate treasure? And the simplest way to obtain the recognition of all races was to beat them into submission. Use absolute power to force them to submit. Chapter 241. Sai, it's too difficult for me. At this moment, Feng Zichen's heart was filled with helplessness. He had become the human emperor because he wanted to lead the human race to occupy a place in this dangerous primordial world, develop his forces well, and wait for the future. However, this human emperor had to force him to become the true human emperor and unify the primordial world. It was simply forcing him. This human emperor was not the emperor of a race, but the emperor of the human Tao, the emperor of all spirits who commanded all the lives in the primordial world. This position was already extremely noble. It could go against the heavens and replace the celestial emperor, becoming the master of all things in the world. In this era, it was impossible for the human emperor to succeed. Even if the human race prospered in the future and redefined the human Tao with the human race, the human emperor would still be a step away from the emperor of the human Tao. In Feng Zichen's memory, no one had been able to become the emperor of the human Tao since ancient times. There were only 2 people who were closest to this position in the primordial world, Dijun and Fuxi. However, Dijun was pursuing the position of the celestial emperor, which was 1 level higher. He was not interested in the position of the human emperor. At the moment when Fuxi was about to succeed, he stepped down from the position of the human emperor and lived in seclusion in the Red Cloud Cave. It seems that this innate cardinal treasure, the 10,000 spirit crown, is not easy to take. Even so, Feng Zichen still took the 10,000 spirit crown. There was no reason to give away something that he had already obtained. Besides, becoming the human emperor was only difficult, but it was not impossible to succeed. Let's wait and see. What if he succeeded? Get up! Nodding, Feng Zichen lifted the crowd below. An invisible force appeared and helped them up. Everyone, I have received the mandate of heaven to honor the human emperor. This is the manifestation of heaven's will. The human race has a great prosperity. At this time, it is time for us to go to the primordial world and develop our grand plans. The East Sea is too small after all. It can no longer accommodate the fate of the human race. Therefore, I've decided to establish another human imperial court outside the East Ocean as a foundation for our race to dominate the primordial world. Standing above the void, Feng Zichen had a panoramic view of the East Sea. He could not help but feel proud as he spoke to the crowd. He had long despised the coast of the East Sea. In such a small place, what great achievements could the human race possibly achieve? If it were not for the fact that the human race was too weak, he would have led the human race out of this place long ago. Yes, Your Majesty. With a swoosh, everyone knelt down again and shouted in unison. Not only Feng Zichen, but the other clansmen were also tired of the East Sea. They couldn't wait to go out and explore. Now, Feng Zichen's suggestion was exactly what they wanted. How could anyone object? Your Majesty, where will the imperial court be built? After a short while, Ji Shisher seemed to have thought of something and asked, Imperial court? At this point, Feng Zichen paused, looked up at the sky and said in an inexplicable tone, I plan to build it in the sky. What? In the sky? Your Majesty, are you joking? How can there be a city built in the sky in this world? After hearing Feng Zichen's answer, everyone immediately began to discuss, thinking that he was joking. That was because they had never heard of anyone building a city in the sky. Even the legendary heavenly court was built on the heaven realm. It was dragged by the connate spirit clouds, formed by the 9 heavens, clear chi, not floating in the sky. At this moment, Feng Zichen suddenly said that, with their intelligence, they naturally could not imagine what the city floating in the sky looked like. They could not be blamed for making a fuss. It was really Feng Zichen who did not follow the rules. In the current primordial world, except for the demon race, all the clans used the earth as their foundation. Their foundations were all in the primordial world. They used the earth veins as the foundation to set up a connate formation and gather the connate chi from all directions. Firstly, it could protect themselves. Secondly, it could improve the cultivation environment. Thirdly, it could be said that there were many benefits. However, if the imperial court was built in the sky, how could they use the power of the earth veins to maintain the formation? Moreover, how much would it cost to keep a giant city floating in the sky every day? With the foundation of the human race, how long could it last? Therefore, the human elders and many Tai Jinxian were not optimistic about Feng Zichen's idea. That's right. I want to build the imperial court in the sky. I want to build a giant floating city in the sky. Nodding, Feng Zichen said with certainty. But, Your Majesty, the elders wanted to say something, but they were interrupted by Feng Zichen with a wave of his hand. I know all of your concerns. Don't worry. Since I dare to build the imperial court in the sky, I naturally have a perfect plan that has taken everything into consideration. Feng Zichen understood the thoughts of these human elders. However, the establishment of the imperial court was decided after careful consideration. How could it be changed by their words? Moreover, if he listened to the elders' suggestions, Feng Zichen did not know if the human race would be in trouble. However, he was certain that the human race would definitely not have a chance to prosper. It was not that Feng Zichen looked down on them, but these human elders. Ever since they were born, they had been staying in this corner of the East Sea. Their horizons had been limited. They did not know the vastness of the earth, the vastness of the sky, the supreme great Tao of the celestial sect of wonders, and the thousands of magical powers of the primordial world. They had long fallen behind and could not keep up with the times. It was not a big deal to float a city in the sky. In the primordial world, any connate race could easily do it. However, in their eyes it was a fuss. This really disappointed Feng Zichen. At the same time, it also made him determined to bring the human race away from the East Sea. The human race could not stay in the East Sea any longer. If they stayed here, the current elders of the human race would be the future of the human race's descendants. Such a human race was terrifying just thinking about it. The lesson of the past was right in front of him. The human race had to leave. Only by seeing a wider world, increasing their knowledge, and broadening their horizons could they walk further and longer on the path of seeking the Tao. Yes, your Majesty. Seeing Feng Zichen frown, the elders could not help but feel reverence and did not dare to say anything. It was not that Feng Zichen was threatening them, but that he had already become the human emperor, and his identity had changed greatly. He had the aura of an emperor and great majesty. He was related to the safety of the human race and had supreme power. He could decide the life and death of everyone with a single word. Therefore, his every move had great majesty, suppressing and stealing souls, making people feel reverence. All right, you can leave. Waving his hand and asking everyone to leave, Feng Zichen walked into the ancestral temple. With the human elders like this, it seemed that they could not be relied on to build the imperial court. Feng Zichen had to do it himself. The power of incense. This imperial court is related to the human path. Naturally, it has to be refined with the power closest to the human path. In the ancestral temple, Feng Zichen muttered. Chapter 242. The power of incense came from the blessings in the hearts of all living beings. It was a magical power, another manifestation of the power of the human path. It came from the same source as the human path. The imperial court that Feng Zichen wanted to build was not the imperial court of the human race, but the imperial court of the human path. This was his ambition. If he could not become the human emperor, then he would build a city that carried the human path. In this way, as the carrier of the human path, the imperial court of the human race would definitely become a powerful treasure of the human path. In the end, Feng Zichen would not stay in the human race forever. After the Great Witch-Demon War ended, he would become Great Emperor Ziwei. He would personally oversee the boundless void and participate in the game of the top echelons of the untainted land. He would use the world as a chessboard and all living beings as chess pieces to calculate the past and future. He would fight with the great divines, the saints, and the world. He would create his own legend and open the path to the primordial chaos. This imperial court of the human path was the inheritance that he had prepared for the human race. It was meant to protect the human race's inheritance after he left. Come. He formed a seal with both hands. Mysterious runes flew out from his hands and merged into the surrounding void, causing an inexplicable throbbing in the surroundings. At the same time, Feng Zichen suddenly became sacred. His majesty was inviolable. He was like a high and mighty divine king looking down on all living beings. Rumble! Without any warning, the surrounding void suddenly shattered. The power of incense, as vast as the sea, surged from all over the untainted land. It was boundless and flooded this place. If this was not the human race's ancestral temple and was protected by Nua's saint power, the entire temple would probably cease to exist under the impact of the power of incense. The power of incense did not come from the human race. It came from the 3 Khanate clans and the untainted land. Otherwise, how could Feng Zichen, who had just exhausted the power of incense that the human race had accumulated for many years, take out so much power of incense? Even if the power of incense from the human race was not exhausted, it was far from enough to build the imperial court of the human path. Moreover, the human path ruled over all living beings. An imperial court built with the power of the human race could only belong to the human race and not the human path. Following Feng Zichen's actions, even more incense and willpower surged forth, causing the surroundings to become blurry. Nothing could be seen clearly. As the ancestor of the incense divine Tao, Feng Zichen naturally possessed the ability to mobilize the power of incense. Moreover, with this title, no matter who the people worshipped, Feng Zichin would get a share of the power of faith generated from the incense. The ancestor of a Tao was just that, extraordinary. Otherwise, there would also not be so many great divine abilities, people pursuing the position of Tao ancestor. In any case, according to what Feng Zichin knew, in the later generations, all the great divine ability people were called ancestors, without exception. From this, one could see the importance of the ancestor. Swear-in lantern refine. With a thought, Feng Zichin summoned the true body of the swear-in lantern from the destiny of the human race. Immediately, there were lanterns that bloomed, endless and boundless, carrying the might of the people Tao, burning towards the boundless power of incense and will. This was the fire of the torch, formed by the civilization of the human race. It was passed down endlessly, and the torch would never be extinguished. Under the burning of the torch, the power of incense and will was constantly refined. Wisps of colorful mist rose, carrying a blurred color that made people intoxicated. The chi of 7 emotions and 6 desires. Feng Zichin, who had almost suffered a loss in this, was extremely sensitive to it. He hurriedly took out the mortal mirror and threw it into the void, letting it float in the air and absorb all the rising chi of 7 emotions and 6 desires. As the chi of 7 emotions and 6 desires was absorbed by the mortal mirror, what was left behind were pieces of colorless crystals that emitted a sacred aura, incense crystals. This was the material Feng Zichin planned to use to refine the human Tao imperial court. With the incense crystals as bricks, a huge city would be built. If such a divine city that was built with the power of all spirits could not bear the might of the people Tao, then what else in the primordial world could bear it? Fortunately, Feng Zichin could mobilize the power of incense and will of the entire primordial world. Otherwise, he would not have been able to refine the human Tao imperial court. There seemed to be a lot of humans, but in the entire primordial world it was nothing. Not to mention the demon clan, even the nearby water clan outnumbered the human clan by several times. It was just that the East Sea was too small, so there seemed to be a lot of humans. It was precisely because he had the support of countless times more incense and goodwill than the human race that Feng Zichin came up with the idea of creating an imperial court of human Tao and put it into action. Otherwise, why would he work so hard to refine the human Tao imperial court? Was he dreaming? Unfortunately, Mount Shoyang is where the Grand Pure One's future Taoist field is. I can't touch it. Otherwise, I can directly move the humans there and use it as a new habitat for the human race to reproduce. Suddenly, Feng Zichin thought of Mount Shoyang and said regretfully, compared to the East Sea, Mount Shoyang was undoubtedly more suitable for the development of the human race. It was favored by good fortune. The Khanate Chi was rich, the mountains and rivers were beautiful, and the rivers were clear. All of them revealed spiritual chi. Of course, more importantly, it was big enough. Even if there were dozens of times more humans, it could still accommodate them. Not only that, Mount Shoyang was connected to the central part of the primordial world. It was very important for the human race to increase their experience and broaden their horizons. There were also many Khanate races living there. If the human race were to go there, they would definitely face a survival crisis. It would not be as safe as the East Sea. Years of fighting would definitely stimulate the fighting spirit of the human race. It would give birth to powerful warriors or even kings to protect the human race. Unfortunately, Mount Shoyang was the Taoist field chosen by the heavenly Tao for the Grand Pure One. No matter how much Feng Zichin coveted it, he did not dare to touch it. Therefore, in desperation, Feng Zichin racked his brains to find a place for the human race to live. Only then did he think of the method to refine the human Tao imperial court. Just as Feng Zichin was in seclusion to refine the human Tao imperial court, the human kings also had their own choices. In Yi City, Yang was looking at Mount Shoyang. Suddenly, he saw a golden light coming towards him. Just as he was about to block it, the golden light merged into his body. Instantly, the aura belonging to Daluo Jinxian rose from Yang's body and shook the surroundings. And that was not the end of it. Golden light bloomed on Yang's body. It was extremely bright and made him look extremely majestic. This was the aura of a human king. At this moment, Yang became a human king. He controlled the vast territory and the lives of tens of thousands of people. He was the leader of the human race. In Chiao province, Yoyu was in seclusion. Suddenly, golden light appeared and entered his body. It raised his cultivation to that of Daluo Jinxian. In Hong City, Dahong, the leader of the 3 generations of humans, was resting. He received the human king status and became Daluo Jinxian. In Li City, Dali, the leader of the 5 generations of humans, received the support of the human king status during a battle with an enemy. He became Daluo Jinxian and killed his enemy. In the East Sea, Feng, the leader of the 8 generations of humans, dating, merged with the human king status and became the human king. Chapter 243. 5 human kings. Yoyu Yang dating Dahong and Dali. These 5 have inherited the destiny of the human race. They are all talents of the human race. I didn't expect them to become human kings. As the human emperor, Feng Zichen naturally sensed the birth of a human king immediately. The result was similar to what he had expected. The Khanate human race had been passed down for 9 generations. The leaders of each generation could be said to be outstanding. Unfortunately, those who were born extraordinary were bound to be accompanied by extraordinary tribulations. After a few tribulations, only 4 of the 9 leaders were left. They were swear-in dating Dahong and Dali. They were talents born from the destiny of the human race. Few humans could compare to them. If it weren't for the Yoyu and Yang who had made great contributions to the human race, the 2 of them might not be able to sit on the throne of human kings with the 3 of them. There's no hurry to become a human king. Let's create the human Dao imperial court first. Now that Feng Zichen couldn't find the time, the remaining 4 human kings would have to wait until the human Dao imperial court appeared before making a decision. With that thought, Feng Zichen took out the chaos bead, spread out the great Dao divine diagram, and activated the chaos formation. Immediately, the incense crystals on the ground surged toward the great Dao divine diagram. They merged with each other and gradually formed 4 huge walls without any gaps. Within the great Dao divine diagram, countless Khanate Dao patterns appeared and imprinted on the walls, constantly increasing the power of the walls. If he wanted the imperial court to float in the air, he needed a huge amount of energy to support it. If he wanted to protect the imperial court, he had to set up a Khanate formation. This also needed a huge amount of energy to support it. Using the chaos bead as the core to build the human Dao imperial court would undoubtedly solve all the problems. The chaos bead contained a chaos space. Its power was endless. It had no problem supporting the consumption of an imperial court. Not only that, using the chaos bead as the core to build a city was equivalent to building the imperial court directly on the chaos formation. It would save Feng Zichen the trouble of setting up the formation and designing the imperial court. The chaos formation was a formation created by the great Dao. It wasn't the result of the primitive world's heavenly Dao. It contained the mysteries of the great Dao. According to the direction of its array formation, the imperial court built could be said to be the most perfect and closest city in the primordial world. It was the best carrier to carry the human Dao. Although the incense divine Dao was born late, the incense power of will had existed for a long time. After the birth of the Khanate life forms, the power of incense and faith began to exist in the untainted land. It wasn't Feng Zichen who created the incense divine Dao that allowed the power of incense to exist. Instead, it was Feng Zichen who discovered the power of incense and faith and concluded the way to use it that created the incense divine Dao. The burning incense, divine, Tao had always existed. Even without Feng Zichen, it would naturally manifest in the world when the time was right. As for the power of faith that had existed since the birth of Xiantian life forms, it had long since lost its master. Now, they had completely benefited Feng Zichen. He had summoned them from all over the primordial world to build the human Tao imperial court. Rumble. Endless incense power surged in from all directions and was refined by Exenhua, turning into incense fire crystals that fused into the walls around them. This caused the embryonic form of a huge city to gradually appear on the great Tao divine diagram. As Feng Zichen became Daluo Jingxian, Xianqing's body also changed. Kunlun Mountain, in a nameless valley hidden among the peaks. On this day, a bright green light suddenly erupted. Endless runes shone and rushed into the 9 layers of clouds, shaking the heavens and the earth. Haha! My Tao has been completed. As soon as he finished speaking, a figure shrouded in immortal light slowly rose from the depths of the valley. Hundreds of millions of immortal phantoms appeared and surrounded him in the center. This person was Xianqing. After Feng Zichen broke through to Daluo Jingxian, under the sensing of his aura, Xianqing was also about to take the crucial step to transcend the long river of fate and become Daluo Jingxian. Vast immortal light rose from Xianqing's body and turned into endless innate, clear qi that kept flowing behind him. Heavenly domain open. Xianqing's face was solemn. He formed a seal with his hand and drew a stroke at the innate, clear qi behind him. The aura of the great Tao spread out from his hand and produced endless runes that swept toward the innate, clear qi. Rumble. The innate, clear qi was completely boiling. It was rolling violently and destroying the endless wind and clouds. And wherever the innate runes passed, it was as if heaven and earth were being split open, causing the innate clear qi to continuously divide and give birth to layers of heavenly domains. The heavenly domains were tangible but immaterial. One layer after another, there were a total of 36 layers. They spread up along the endless void and came to the deepest part of the void, a mysterious and unpredictable place. There was a long river that seemed real and illusory. It was vast and boundless, flowing quietly forward forever. It was the long river of fate. The 36 heavens formed from the connate, clear qi actually fused with the boundless void and arrived at the location of the river of destiny. It was like a celestial realm that had existed since time immemorial. It stood towering above it and overlooked the changes of destiny. Ha! With a laugh, Xianqing stepped into the heavenly domain and walked up layer by layer. And as he ascended to a higher level of the heavenly domain, the aura on his body became stronger. The moment Xianqing ascended to the 36-layer heavenly domain, a ray of light suddenly rushed out from the long river of fate and merged with him. It made his aura reach an unprecedented peak, and he officially stepped into the realm of Daluo. The light that flew out from the long river of fate was Xianqing's light of fate. It flew out, indicating that Xianqing had transcended the long river of fate and achieved Daluo Jingxian. There was no need to fight for the great Tao because there was no one to prove the Tao of the innate, clear spirit other than the 3 pure ones. Xianqing was the successor of Taoist Shangqing, so why would the 3 pure ones make things difficult for him? As long as he reached a certain level, proving the Tao was easy. At this moment, the Tao of the innate, clear spirit manifested in the world and merged with Xianqing, causing him to sublimate and become the carrier of the Tao, immortal and indestructible. Xianqing was an innate divine demon that was completely born from the origin of the innate clear spirit. He was purer than the 3 pure ones. He was a natural carrier of the Tao of the innate clear spirit. Therefore, in just an instant, he completed his transformation, perfectly controlling his own power and stabilizing his realm. It was so simple for an innate divine demon to prove the Tao of the Daluo Jingxian. Xianqing proved the Tao, and as the heaven realm that originated from the same source as him, it naturally had a reaction. The origin of the heaven realm fell from the 9 heavens, and with the joy of the heaven realm, it poured into Xianqing's body. An innate divine demon that originated from the same source as the heaven realm. The first disciple of the 3 pure ones, the first person of the 3rd generation of Xianmen. Interesting. The changes in the heaven realm naturally attracted Dijun's attention. He too and the book of Luo trembled slightly, and he understood the cause and effect. Bai Zhe, go to the treasury of the heaven realm and get a pot of 3 light holy water. Help me give it to Taoist Shangqing's disciple, Taoist Xianqing, to congratulate him on proving the Tao of the Daluo Jingxian. After thinking, Dijun said, Chapter 244. The Khanate Clear Chi was born with great karma with the heaven realm. If he showed his goodwill now, he might become a great help to the heavenly court in the future. If his disciple was in danger, how could Taoist Shangqing, as his master, not do anything? The 3 pure ones had always been one. Since Taoist Shangqing took action, the other pure ones and pure ones would definitely take action. In this way, the heavenly court would have 3 more saints to help them. Wouldn't that be a great thing? With this thought in mind, Dijun made such a decision. One had to know that the pot of triple brilliance holy water that Dijun mentioned was not an ordinary pot. How could a pot used by a great medium be the same as an ordinary pot? That pot was at least the size of a pond, maybe even bigger. Triple brilliance holy water was formed by the 3 lights of the sun, moon, and stars. It was one of the 10 great Khanate holy waters of the Eldritch world. The value of a pond of Khanate holy water was no less than a superior grade Khanate spiritual treasure. Only Dijun, who possessed the heavenly cycle of stars, could be so extravagant. A pond of triple brilliance holy water was given away as a gift without a care. How generous! Yes, your majesty. Although he was confused about who Taoist Xianqing was, Bai Zhe did not hesitate to accept the order after hearing Dijun's order. With the integration of the heaven realm's origin, the 36 heavens under Xianqing's feet underwent a miraculous change. In the heavens, Khanate Tao patterns were born. They contained an inexplicable power, causing the space in the heavens to gradually have a sense of reality. Then the heavenly palace appeared. It was beautiful and emitted an inexplicable Tao rhythm, covering the layers of heavens. Rumble. The 36 heavens suddenly shrunk and turned into a Tao seal surrounded by immortal light, falling into Xianqing's hand. 36 heavenly Tao scriptures! Feng Zichen muttered to himself as he played with the Tao seal in his hand. With the support of the heaven realm's origin, the 36 heavens underwent a tremendous change. It turned from a vision into a Khanate Tao scripture. This Khanate Tao scripture recorded the evolution of the Khanate Clear Chi. It could evolve the 36 heavens and explain the Khanate Clear Spirit Tao. Every time he deepened his understanding of the innate clear spirit Tao, he would be able to evolve a layer of heavenly domain. When all 36 heavenly domains appeared, he would be able to fully comprehend the Tao of innate clear spirit and become Daluo Jingxian. Moreover, each level of the celestial domain contained an innate divine ability with incredible power. Unfortunately, the source of the heaven realm was limited. Being able to evolve the innate Tao scripture was already the limit. These 36 innate divine abilities only had enough time to nurture a prototype before the origin of the heaven realm was exhausted. In other words, the future achievements of these 36 congenital supernatural powers all depended on how far Xianqing could go and how far he could deduce them. Not only that, but the 36 heavens domain itself was also a supreme ability that possessed the power to suppress the heavens. After attaining great success, it would be as if the entire primitive celestial realm was pressing down on them. How many people in the world would be able to stop it? Clear qi and turbid qi are indeed the foundation of the great desolate world. Using these two das, not only can one obtain the favor of the world, but there are also many unknown benefits. Putting away the seal, Xianqing sighed. Being of the same origin as the world, one's birth was naturally incomparably noble and could share the fate of the world. As long as one did not court death, one could live freely without any disasters. Moreover, with the advancement of the world, it was not impossible for the origin Tao fruit to be formed. The benefits were beyond imagination. Primitive world. Birth is really too important. A bad birth may not mean that one has nothing, but a good birth definitely has everything. Throughout the history of the primitive world, those who could be active in the primitive world were all innate divine demons, without exception. Compared to Feng Zichen, one would know. Xianqing's path to Tao validation was too smooth, almost smooth sailing. But Feng Zichen was different. Every step on the path to Tao validation was extremely dangerous. If it were not for Panga's favor, he would have died long ago. The gap was too big, but fortunately, everything was different now. Feng Zichen was also an innate divine demon, and a top innate saint, Panga's orthodox. He was a true proud son of heaven. Speaking of which, Feng Zichen's current situation was that he had changed his destiny with his own strength, which was the most in line with the concept of man conquering nature. If he was not born in the wrong era, the position of the sacred emperor of the human Tao would belong to him. It was also because of this that the human Tao favored him so much. Otherwise, did he really think that with the power of all spirits he could summon the help of the human Tao at will? There were many mighty figures in the primitive world. If it was so easy to summon the power of the human Tao, the flower of human Tao would not be so rare. At the end of the day, it was because the human race thought highly of Feng Zichen that they helped him again and again. If it were others, they would not have such good treatment. It's time to return to the Jade Void Palace. After calculating the time, Xianqing collected his thoughts and turned to walk towards the Jade Void Palace. There, the three pure ones were still waiting for him. As the first disciple of the third generation of the celestial sect of wonders, Xianqing had proven his Tao, Daluo Jingxian. It was a big deal that the celestial sect of wonders had a successor. The three pure ones deliberately put down the matters in their hands and gathered in the Jade Void Palace, waiting for Xianqing to pay his respects. Great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure, give me your life. On the way to the Jade Void Palace, Xianqing suddenly heard a voice that was filled with killing intent. His expression changed, and he hurriedly rushed in the direction of the voice. At the foot of Kunlun Mountain, Zhao Gongming was holding the Kunwa sword and leading a group of outer sect disciples of the Jie school to attack the great Taoist master Numinous Treasure. As the eldest outer sect disciple of the Jie school, he could not weaken the reputation of the Jie school. Therefore, the Grand Master of Heaven gave the superior grade Khanate Spirit Treasure, the Kunwa sword, to Zhao Gongming. Originally, the Dharma treasure that the Grand Master of Heaven gave him should be the supreme grade Khanate Spirit Treasure, the sea-calming divine pearl. However, the Grand Master of Heaven had already given this Dharma treasure to Xianqing. Therefore, the Grand Master of Heaven gave Zhao Gongming the Khanate Spirit Sword, which was not inferior to a supreme grade Khanate Spirit Treasure, the Kunwa Sword. However, the great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure was also extraordinary. He held the superior grade Khanate Spirit Treasure, the Dragon Tiger Seal, in one hand, and the middle grade Khanate Spirit Treasure, the Demon Subduing Sword, in the other. He fought with the disciples of the Jie school very well. After a long battle, Zhao Gongming was furious. He took out the Kunwa sword and attacked the great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure. The Khanate Spirit Sword abandoned all defense and focused on the power of killing. Therefore, it was extremely powerful. In addition, Zhao Gongming suddenly attacked without any warning. For a moment, The great Taoist master numinous treasure was in danger. Stop! Xianqing saw this scene as soon as he arrived. His face turned cold and he shouted sternly. At the same time he waved his sleeve and the connate clear qi rushed out, sweeping everyone present into the air and throwing them to the ground. As a result, although everyone was fine, they lost a lot of face and lay on the ground in a sorry state. Greetings, eldest senior brother. Seeing that the person who came was Xianqing, everyone quickly got up from the ground. They didn't dare to argue and greeted him. Chapter 245. All right, you're all promising. The senior and junior brothers of the same lineage actually fought to the point of fighting each other. Moreover, it's at the foot of Kunlun Mountain. You're really capable. As he spoke, Xianqing pointed at everyone and scolded sternly. Do you still have Master and Uncle Masters in your hearts? Do you still have any feelings for them? As long as there is any friendship in their hearts, why would they do such a thing that would hurt their loved ones and make their enemies happy? The current 3 pure ones had yet to split up. They were a family. If the disciples of Jia School and Chan School were to engage in a life-and-death battle at the foot of Kunlun Mountain, wouldn't they become the joke of the primordial world? Eldest senior brother, we treat them as our senior and junior brothers, but they might not think highly of us. Perhaps they might even think that we're climbing up the social ladder? At that moment, Zhao Gongming calmed down and said indignantly, there were all kinds of disciples in Jia School. There were connate god fiends from the top of the primordial world, as well as connate life forms with feathers and feathers. There were many kinds of them. Connate god fiends were still all right and came from noble backgrounds. However, connate life forms came from humble backgrounds and were not liked by the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. In addition, their bad habits had not disappeared. Ever since they arrived at Kunlun Mountain, they would gather together to drink and have fun or play in the mountains. The spiritual beasts of Kunlun Mountain suffered and were satisfied by their appetites. They stirred up the Kunlun Mountain into a mess and completely messed up the peace of the place. Even the Grand Pure One was a little unhappy. The disciples of Chan School were different. They were carefully selected by the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning. The 12 personal disciples and 2 in-name disciples were all connate god fiends. They were extremely noble and were favored by him. Xianqing did not know how much the disciples of Chan School had learned from the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning. However, they had learned most of the personality and style of the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning. Therefore, they were disdainful of the disciples of Jia School. However, the disciples of the 2 sects often had conflicts, but it had never been like today. Both sides wanted to kill each other. That was also the reason why Xianqing was angry. Shut up! What are you saying? We're all fellow apprentices. There's only the difference of seniority. There's no such thing as high or low. Today, you and the others at the foot of Kunlun Mountain recklessly used your weapons and violated the sect's rules. The poor way will punish you to go into seclusion in the Immortal's cave and reflect on your mistakes. You are not allowed to come out for 1,000 years. Then Xianqing asked them, So, are you convinced? There were many disciples in Jia School. The Grand Master of Heaven could not take care of every disciple. Therefore, other than the personal disciples, all the outer sect disciples were handed over to Xianqing to manage. We will obey eldest senior brother's orders. With this reason, Zhao Gongming and the others did not dare to talk back to Xianqing. They quickly bowed to him and left. Soon, only Xianqing and the great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure were left. What's the matter? Do you have something to say, Ling Bao? Seeing that the great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure did not leave, Xianqing said unhappily, Eldest senior brother, I refuse to accept this. It was clearly your Jia School disciples who attacked first. Why do I have to be punished as well? Besides, you are a member of Jia school, and I am a member of Chan school. Even if you want to punish me, it should be up to Master. What kind of logic is it for you to punish me? The great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure cupped his hands and said unwillingly. What he meant was, you are a disciple of Jia school. What right do you have to punish a disciple of Chan school? The pride of a disciple of a saint was undoubtedly displayed on him. The poor way can't punish you? Very good, great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure. You are really good. At this moment, Xianqing was about to explode. If they treated him like this, one could imagine what kind of attitude the disciples of Chan school usually had towards the disciples of Jia school. He was afraid that he would directly vent out the words of putting on hair and feathers, wet and oviparous. In that case, not to mention the disciples of Jia school. Even anyone in the primordial world could suffer such a great humiliation and not be angry? No wonder Zhao Gongming and the others had killing intent. If this happened to Xianqing, he would not be able to tolerate it. In addition, the great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure's name was similar to the Grand Master of Heavens. No matter how the disciples of Jia school treated him, it would not be surprising. The poor Wei wants to see today. If I punish you, will second Uncle Master punish me or punish you? Furious, Xianqing reached out and grabbed the great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure. Great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure, you are disrespectful to the poor Wei. The poor Wei wants to seal you under the Qiling Cliff for 10,000 years as punishment. Under Xianqing's hand, the surrounding connate qi swarmed over and wrapped around the great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure. No matter how much strength he used, the dragon tiger seal and the demon subduing sword could not break free at all. They could only obediently be captured. Fellow Taoists, stop! Just as Xianqing was about to take down the great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure, a voice sounded from afar. At the same time, a pale green ruler suddenly appeared and shattered Xianqing's seal, wanting to take away the great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure. Get lost! Xianqing's eyes turned cold. He did not care who it was. He flipped his hand and threw out a Tao seal. It evolved into the 36 heavenly domains in the air. It was like an eternal heavenly realm that enveloped the great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure. It was the supreme mystical ability that he had just obtained, the 36 heavenly palaces. Today, Xianqing was determined to teach the great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure a lesson. Unless the 3 pure ones came personally, it would be useless. Under the 36 heavenly domains, the great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure felt that the future was dark when he sensed the vast heavenly might. All his paths of survival had been cut off. All his vitality was about to be wiped out. He was bound to die. He could not help but tremble in shock. He could not help but shout, "Teacher, save me!" Clearly, he recognized the identity of the person who came. In Kunlun, there was only one person who could be addressed that way by the great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure. He was the deputy sect master of Chan School, one of the 3,000 guests of the Purple Cloud Palace, Taoist Randing. Fellow Taoist, please calm down. You are already the Daluo Taoist priests. You are high and mighty. Why do you have to be calculative with the great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure? After his background was exposed, Randang could not hide anymore. He immediately walked out of the void and persuaded Xianqing. On the other hand, when Randang saw that Xianqing had verified his Daluo Jinxian, he wanted to congratulate him. However, who knew that halfway there he would see the disciples of the Jia school and Chan school fighting? That was a common occurrence in Kunlun. The saint did not care, and Randang did not want to cause trouble. Only Xianqing was in seclusion all year round and did not know much about that. He originally wanted to take a detour, But who knew that the great Taoist master numinous treasure would be so ungrateful and talk back to Xianqing? Xianqing was angered and wanted to suppress him. This time, Taoist Randang was anxious. The great Taoist master numinous treasure was suppressed by Xianqing, but he did not help. If the heavenly lord of primordial beginning found out, with his personality, he would hate him. Chapter 246. Xianqing was the first disciple of the three pure ones. The great Taoist master numinous treasure was disrespectful to him and dared to talk back to him. In the end, he was suppressed by him. Even if heavenly Lord Yuanshi knew about this, he would not punish Xianqing. On the contrary, he would reward him and reprimand the great Taoist master numinous treasure. He would blame him for not knowing how to respect his elders and stand up for Xianqing. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning valued etiquette the most. The great Taoist master numinous treasure's actions thought that he had increased the prestige of Chan school, but in fact he had deeply angered the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. Otherwise, with such a commotion here, how could the heavenly lord of primordial beginning, who loved his disciple, not help? It was all because the actions of the great Taoist master numinous treasure had angered him. He had used Xianqing to teach him a lesson. Furthermore, when this matter was over, the great Taoist master numinous treasure would definitely be reprimanded when he returned to the Jade Void Palace. However, that was the treatment of Xianqing and had nothing to do with Taoist Randang. This matter had caused the heavenly lord of primordial beginning to lose face. He must have a belly full of anger to vent. If Randang did not help, wouldn't that give him a reason to vent? As the deputy sect master of Chan School, what's the use of watching from the side when a disciple of Chan School appears? Thinking of the adverse effects of this matter on him, Taoist Randang took action. That was why the scene just now happened. Uncle Master, you're making things difficult for me. You're a senior, so how can you call me fellow Taoist? Just call me Xianqing. He waved his hand at Taoist Randang. Xianqing did not dare to accept his title of fellow Taoist. No matter what, Taoist Randang was an existence that listened to the Tao in the Purple Cloud Palace with the three pure ones. Even if he was doing a little poorly now, he was still a Taoist of the Celestial Sect of Wonders and an elder of the Xianqing. Even the heavenly Lord Yuanshi addressed him as a fellow Taoist. Xianqing could not mess up the seniority. Then the poor way will drag it out and call you Xianqing. Taoist Randang was very satisfied with Xianqing's attitude. As the saying goes, the more you lack something, the more you care about it. Because Burning Lamp Taoist could not break through to the sage-to-be realm for a long time. He went to Kunlun Mountain to worship heavenly Lord Yuanshi as his teacher when he opened the mountain to accept disciples. He asked for the help of the sage to break through, but heavenly Lord Yuanshi did not dare to accept him as a disciple. Who was Taoist Randang? The Khanate God Fiend was born. He had once heard of the Tao in the Purple Cloud Palace. Although he was not the Tao ancestor's disciple in name, they were master and disciple. Even if he met the Tao ancestor, he could call him teacher. He was already considered a disciple of the Tao ancestor. Anyone who saw him would have to call him fellow Taoist. If the heavenly lord of primordial beginning accepted him as his disciple, what would happen to the Tao ancestor? What about the fellow Taoists of the Purple Cloud Palace? However, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning couldn't chase him out when he begged so hard in the past. In the end, he gave Taoist Randang the position of deputy sect master because they had listened to the Tao together in the past. In this way, he could be above all the disciples and not lose his identity. He could also let him listen to the preaching together with his disciples and achieve his purpose of coming to Kunlun Mountain. It could be said to be killing two birds with one stone. He obviously didn't want to agree, but because of his face, he couldn't say anything to refuse. Thinking about it, it was really difficult for Lord of Heaven Yuanshi. The way the primeval Lord of Heaven handled this matter could be said to be perfect, leaving people completely speechless. However, Taoist Ronding's reputation was ruined. Such a shameless act made all the great mystical abilities feel deeply ashamed. Taoist Randang had completely become the target of contempt for the mighty figures of the primordial world. That made him a little embarrassed to see others. It also made him extremely sensitive to matters related to his reputation. Xianqing's praise of him could be said to have scratched his itch. How could Taoist Randang not be happy? It's his fault that the great Taoist master, Numinous Treasure, offended you. It's only right for you to teach him a lesson. No one can say anything. However, it's a little too much for you to suppress him under the Qilin Cliff for 10,000 years. Xianqing, the great Taoist master Numinous Treasure, is ultimately your junior brother, the direct disciple of Saint Yuqing. For the sake of the saint's reputation, you should be merciful. Seeing that Xianqing's emotions had calmed down, Taoist Randang continued to persuade him. Xianqing was a little moved by these words, and his anger gradually subsided. Numinous Treasure, you're so presumptuous. Xianqing is your eldest senior brother. It's fine if you don't respect him, but you actually dare to speak rudely to him. Have you ever taken the teachings that Taoist brother has given you to heart? Do you still have any respect for seniority in your eyes? What a bastard. Aren't you going to apologize to your eldest senior brother? At that moment, Taoist Randang suddenly glared the great Taoist master Numinous Treasure and scolded him fiercely. Eldest senior brother, Numinous Treasure, was bewitched. That's why he spoke rudely to you. I know I was wrong. Please, for the sake of Master, spare me this time. After receiving Taoist Ronding's reminder, the great Taoist master Numinous Treasure hurriedly begged Xianqing for mercy. He no longer had the arrogance from before. Ever since Taoist Randang learned that Xianqing had already verified the Tao of Daluo Jingxian, the great Taoist master Numinous Treasure knew that he was most likely in trouble this time. The Daluo could not be humiliated easily. That was definitely not empty words in the primordial world. As long as the great Taoist master Numinous Treasure did not become the Daluo Jingxian, he had to maintain enough respect when facing the real Daluo Jingxian. Even if he was the disciple of a saint, he was no exception. Otherwise, even if the great Taoist master Numinous Treasure was taught a lesson, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning could not say anything. He was already like that when facing outsiders, let alone Daluo Jingxian, who was in front of him, who was his eldest senior brother. The great Taoist master Numinous Treasure had already imagined his master's furious expression when he found out about this. He could not help but feel regretful, and felt that he should not have been too arrogant. Unfortunately, it was too late to regret now. He only hoped that teacher Ronding's pleas would work. Lowering his head, the great Taoist master Numinous Treasure thought silently. He had no choice in this situation. Taoist Randang was his only hope. Although Xianqing's Tao verification caused a huge commotion, what kind of place was Kunlun Mountain? The ancestral meridian of the East, the second famous mountain of the primordial world, was protected by a supreme array formation. Therefore, the phenomenon of Xianqing's Tao verification was spontaneously concealed by Kunlun Mountain. If one's cultivation level was not Daluo Jingxian's, they would not be able to sense it. However, the great Taoist master Numinous Treasure of Tai Jingxian naturally did not know. Otherwise, even if he went crazy, he would not dare to speak rudely to Xianqing. Uncle Master is right. Then Xianqing will follow Uncle Master's instructions and punish him leniently. Xianqing, who was already angry, saw that Randang had even prepared a way out for him, so he changed his words. Numinous Treasure spoke rudely to me. I'll punish him to go to Qilin Cliff and reflect on his mistakes for 1,000 years. Previously, the disciples of Jia school had already returned to their cave abodes to reflect on their mistakes for 1,000 years. To be fair, I'll punish Numinous Treasure for another 1,000 years. In that case, I'll let Numinous Treasure go to Cheelin Cliff and reflect on his mistakes for 2,000 years. Uncle Master, what do you think? After saying the punishment for the great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure, Xianqing turned to ask Taoist Randang, as if he was asking for his opinion. Chapter 247. Numinous Treasure spoke rudely to you, so he deserves to suffer. Moreover, it's good to let him suffer a little and remember this lesson. Taoist Randang smiled and said, Of course. He knew that Xianqing was not really asking for his opinion. It was just a polite greeting. Naturally, he would not speak out against it and make himself uncomfortable. Moreover, Xianqing's attitude was so respectful that he had no reason to object. What, 3,000 years? Hearing that he had to go to Cheelin Cliff to meditate for 3,000 years, great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure was in a bad mood. Cheelin Cliff was not a good place to go. Zhu Lin was there to suppress the primordial land, so the connate, turbid air gathered there, and the space was abnormally heavy. It was very unfriendly to immortal cultivators. If he was not careful, he would be contaminated by the connate turbid air, and his dharma power would be contaminated. This was undoubtedly a big trouble. Who knew how long it would take to get rid of it? Therefore, not to mention 3,000 years. Even if it was 100 years, he did not want to go. If it was any other place, he would agree. But Cheelin Cliff was absolutely impossible. Master! Dissatisfied. Great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure opened his mouth to say something. He saw Taoist Randang wave his hand and send out a ray of light, sending him down the Cheelin Cliff. Seeing the dissatisfaction on great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure's face, Randang hurriedly suppressed him to prevent him from saying anything unwise and causing the situation to change. Xianqing, I think the three brothers are already waiting for you in the Jade Void Palace. You've been here for so long. It's time for you to leave so that they won't wait. After dealing with great Taoist Master Numinous Treasure, Taoist Randang said to Xianqing, Uncle Master, Xianqing will take his leave first. Nodding, Xianqing stepped on the connate spirit cloud and rushed to the Jade Void Palace. Xianqing greets Master, Uncle Master, and second Uncle Master. Stepping into the Jade Void Palace, Xianqing bowed to the three pure ones sitting at the top. Xianqing, you really didn't disappoint me. In just a few 100,000 years, you've proven your Tao as Daluo Jinxian. This kind of aptitude, even among the connate gods and demons, is considered top-notch. The one who was the happiest when Xianqing attained the Tao was none other than Tongtian. Among all the disciples of the 6 sages, only one of his disciples had proved Daluo Jinxian. It could be said that this had greatly increased his reputation and showed that he had taught well. How could the prime of Tongtian not be happy? Next were the true Lord of morality and nothingness and the primeval Lord of heaven. Now, the 3 pure ones were still one. Xianqing was taught by the 3 of them together. He was Daluo Jinxian, and the 2 of them were proud of him. Come, Xianqing, take this. Waving at Xianqing, Tongtian took out a green lotus seed. The lotus seed wasn't big, but it was verdant and exuded dazzling divine light of creation. It was not the usual white color, but the rarely seen green color. It was extremely mystical. Master, this is? Holding the lotus seed in his hand, Xianqing could not help but feel surprised when he felt the creation qi contained within it. This creation qi was a bit too much. At this moment, Xianqing had a feeling that even the white lotus seed of purification that he gave Ao Shui and the black lotus seed of destruction in his hand were not as precious as the green lotus seed in front of him. But how could this be? The white lotus seed of purification was born from the creation of heaven and earth, and the black lotus seed of destruction was born from the origin of the upper grade, primordial spiritual root. Both of them were treasures that were hard to find in the untainted land. They were not inferior to upper grade, primordial spiritual treasures, and even surpassed them. Xianqing really could not think of a lotus seed that was more powerful than them. The 4 great lotus seeds were already the most powerful in the untainted land. There were no more lotus seeds in the untainted land that were more powerful than them. Who produced this lotus seed? It could not be the green lotus of creation, right? This is a primordial treasure, the lotus seed produced by the 24th grade green lotus of creation. It is shared by the 3 of us. Now that you have attained Daluo Jingxian, I'll give this to you. While Xianqing was puzzled, he heard sect leader Tongtian say, slowly. His body trembled and he was speechless for a long time. It was really the lotus seed produced by the green lotus of creation. No wonder it was so magical and far surpassed the lotus seed produced by the 4 great lotus seeds. Not long after the end of the ancient times, I traveled the untainted land with your 2 uncle masters. On Mount Buzhou, we accidentally found the primordial treasure, the 24th grade green lotus of creation. At that time, under the influence of the way of heaven, the green lotus of creation turned into 3 primordial spiritual treasures. They are my Qingping sword, your uncle master's dragon head walking stick, and your second uncle master's 3 precious jade rui scepter, to show that the 3 pure ones were originally one family. Although the green lotus of creation disappeared, the lotus seed that it had produced previously remained and was kept by the 3 of us. Sect leader Tongtian pointed at the lotus seed in Xianqing's hand and introduced it. The green lotus of creation produces a lotus seed, which means inheritance. The 3 pure ones, accepting Xianqing, also means inheritance. Today, passing the green lotus of creation to you is to announce to the world that you, Xianqing, are the most orthodox successor of the 3 pure ones and can inherit their mantle. At this moment, Taiqing and Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning spoke to Xianqing one after another, explaining to him the meaning of passing down the green lotus of creation. Yes, the green lotus of creation was the child of the green lotus of creation. As a disciple personally taught by the 3 pure ones, Xianqing was of the same origin as them. Wasn't he equivalent to their child? The green lotus of creation belonged to the 3 pure ones, and the green lotus of creation belonged to Xianqing. The 4 of them were one, and they were of the same origin. It meant that the 4 of them were one, and the inheritance was orderly. They all had the green lotus of creation. Buzz, buzz, buzz. After Xianqing accepted the green lotus of creation, the dragon head walking stick in Taiqing's hand, the 3 precious jade rui scepter in Yuqing's hand, and the Qingping sword in Shangqing's hand suddenly vibrated. Then the green lotus of creation in Xianqing's hand also began to vibrate inexplicably. In the end, the 4 spiritual treasures emitted a green light one after another and merged into one in the air, forming a green lotus. There were jade roots, green leaves, and a green lotus. It was 24 grades, and there was a lotus seed in it. It was the connate cardinal treasure, the 24-grade green lotus of creation. Of course, this was not the real green lotus of creation. It had already shattered and turned into the 4 treasures in the hall. What was manifesting now was the fate of the green lotus of creation. The combination of the 4 treasures was equivalent to the rebirth of the green lotus of creation. Now that the 4 treasures were gathered together, their connate origins attracted each other and produced a resonance, causing a strange change. In the unseen world, it summoned the fate of the green lotus of creation. Poof! The fate of the green lotus of creation came and went quickly. In just an instant, it shattered and turned into 4 parts, falling into the Dharma treasures in the hands of the 4 people. For a moment, The 4 Dharma treasures shone brightly, emitting a bright Tao light. Tao sounds resounded, and the great Tao surrounded them. Khanate Tao runes circulated, creating thousands of phenomena. There was also the chi of creation coming from the void, filling the entire hall. After a long time, the many phenomena slowly dissipated, and the hall returned to normal. Chapter 248. At that moment, Xianqing looked at the lotus seed in his hand again and felt that it was different from before. However, he could not tell what was different. Helplessly, he looked at the 3 pure ones with a puzzled gaze. Oh, I didn't expect there to be such a change when the 4 treasures are gathered. After sizing up the dragon-headed walking stick in his hand for a while, the Grand Pure One said slowly, Father stepped on the chaos green lotus and opened the sky. The birth of the primordial world absorbed a lot of the origin of the chaos green lotus. Therefore, the creation green lotus that has inherited the origin of the chaos green lotus is also one of the heaven-opening treasures. It has great power and luck. Unfortunately, before the creation green lotus was fully nurtured, it was broken down by the 3 of us, causing the heaven-opening luck to be lost. It's also because of fate. Today, the 4 treasures are gathered and resonated. It has re-evolved the aura of the Khanate cardinal treasure, the creation green lotus, causing the Khanate luck that it lacked to descend from the netherworld. The 4 treasures have obtained this trace of luck and turned into heaven-opening spiritual treasures. Many changes have occurred, but the poor way can't tell what kind of changes they are. You still have to figure it out yourself. Those words were obviously directed at Xianqing. After all, the 3 pure ones were saints. They could know the cause and effect with just a thought. However, Xianqing did not have that ability. Sigh. This heaven-opening luck came a little late. If it had descended before we attained the Tao, it might have saved us a lot of trouble. However, now that it has descended, we have already become saints. The effect it can have is negligible. This luck is no longer of much use. Seeing the heaven-opening luck, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning seemed to have thought of some past events. He could not help but sigh and sigh. Although the heaven-opening luck was extraordinary, after the creation green lotus was shattered, a lot of the heaven-opening luck contained in it had scattered. There was not much left. Moreover, after descending here, the heaven-opening luck that was not much to begin with was divided into 4. In that case, the 4 of them did not obtain much luck. Saints were superior to everything, unless it was like the 3 heaven-opening treasures, which carried incomparable heaven-opening luck. It would be of help to them. A trace of heaven-opening luck was far from enough. However, this luck is useless to us, but it is of great use to you, Xianqing. The Grand Pure One smiled and suddenly said. Then he pointed at the dragon-head walking stick in his hand, and a misty green light flew out and fell into the green lotus seed in Xianqing's hand. It was the green lotus of creation that hung down to open the heaven's luck. That's right. Eldest senior brother's words are reasonable. Nodding, the primeval lord of heaven and the sect leader of Tongtian injected the heaven luck from their spiritual treasures into the green lotus seed. At that moment, the green lotus seed in Xianqing's hand glowed with spiritual light. The chi of creation surged and stirred the rules of heaven and earth. It gave birth to all kinds of auspicious signs that were dazzling. With this heaven-opening providence, you can expect to have a primordial chaos future. Xianqing, quickly thank your 2 martial uncles. Tongtian said to Xianqing excitedly. Xianqing thanks master and martial uncle. Xianqing was extremely touched by the 3 pure ones' actions. He couldn't help but bow to the 3 of them. He was ashamed to receive such kindness. The Tao of karmic luck was the most mysterious. With great karmic luck, it was as if the heavens were helping him. He could turn misfortune into luck and misfortune into auspiciousness. He would have endless opportunities. No matter what he did, he would not die. As for the loss of karmic luck, even a powerful person would be in danger of dying, such as Jun and Tai. Even a saint would end up in a miserable state if he lost his karmic luck, such as the sect leader of Tongtian after he became a god. The heaven-opening providence was the most special kind of karmic luck in the primordial world. It was bestowed by the great Tao and was not born in the primordial world itself. With this luck, even if he went to the great chaos outside the realm, he would be able to obtain opportunities and not encounter danger. This was a sign of the great Tao's favor. In this way, would the primordial chaos Tao realm be far away. Tai could look down on all the heroes and stand out among the powerful people, becoming the #1 expert in the primordial world before the saints. In addition to his own efforts, it was also related to the heaven-opening providence on the bell of chaos. The 3 pure ones could even give such a treasure to Xianqing without hesitation. Obviously, they really treated him as their successor. This was a treatment that other disciples could not enjoy. From this, it could be seen how much the 3 pure ones loved Xianqing. All right, don't be such a little girl. Come forward. The poor Wei has something to tell you. Seeing that Xianqing did not get up, the Grand Pure One casually lifted him up and let him speak. What instructions does Uncle Master have? I will do my best to complete it. Xianqing walked in front of the Grand Pure One and solemnly promised. This matter concerns the inheritance of the celestial sect of wonders. It has to be you. As he spoke, the Grand Pure One's expression became serious. The Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning and the sect leader of Tongtian were the same. The inheritance of the celestial sect of wonders? This time, Xianqing really did not understand. How could a Daluo Jinxian help with the inheritance of the celestial sect of wonders? Even if the saints could not help, they should at least find a powerful person, right? Take this. The Grand Pure One flipped his hand and took out a purple rope and handed it to Xianqing. This is, after taking the rope, Xianqing was puzzled, but also moved. This purple rope was a superior grade, connate spirit treasure. Although it was precious, it was nothing to Xianqing, who had many Dharma treasures. What really moved him was the 3 connate Tao seals that were imprinted on the rope and surrounded by green light. Above the Tao seals, connate clear qi filled the air. Countless connate runes were born and destroyed within it. There was also the power of origin, mysterious qi surging, deducing the changes of the universe and the operation of heaven and earth. This was the 3 pure Tao seal in the primordial world. Only the 3 pure ones could control the power of origin, mysterious qi. This was a gift from the primordial world to them, and it was also the 3 strongest karmic positions in the universe. The 3 qi of origin, mysterious qi, were the origin qi of the universe and could evolve everything in the world. The 3 pure ones held this karmic position, which was the sect of the gods and the ancestor of creation, to show their respect. Although this rope was only a superior grade connate spirit treasure, with the support of the 3 pure Tao seal, it could mobilize the power of the universe and had the ability to destroy everything. It was really hard to guess how powerful it was. This treasure is called the immortal binding rope. Although it is only a superior grade connate spirit treasure, with the support of the 3 of us, its power is second only to connate cardinal treasures. Handing this treasure to you is to let you take the responsibility of supervising the 3rd generation disciples of the celestial sect of wonders. In the future, when you travel in the primordial world, whenever you see a disciple of the celestial sect of wonders be ruthless, murderous, cruel, and unscrupulous, you can use this treasure to take them down. According to their merit and karma, you can either imprison or kill them to protect the reputation of the celestial sect of wonders. Hearing this, Xianqing's heart skipped a beat. The Grand Pure One had asked him to supervise the third generation disciples of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. This wasn't a good job. Chapter 249. Among the third generation disciples of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. The disciples of the Jia sect were the ones who had misbehaved and did not abide by the rules of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. In other words, if Xianqing accepted this task, the first to fall into his hands would most likely be his junior brothers. The realm of the saint was high and profound. He was one with the heavenly Tao. He might not care too much about those disciples who had negative karma. If they died, they died. However, Xianqing's realm was not as profound as that of a saint. He could not do anything to his junior brother. Moreover, even if he hardened his heart and dealt with a few of his junior brothers, what would others think? Wouldn't he be cutting himself off from Jia school? Moreover, the disciples of the Celestial Sect of Wonders were not limited to the successors of the three sections. This included the successors of the Western sect and the 3,000 mortal guests of the Purple Cloud Palace. They were all considered successors of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. If Xianqing touched their disciples, it would be terrible. Due to Xianqing's identity, the great mediums might say something on the surface. They might even praise Xianqing and thank him for cleaning up the mess for them. However, no one knew how they would plot against Xianqing in the dark. If my disciple makes a mistake, I will discipline him myself. Why do I need an outsider like you to meddle in my business and teach my disciple a lesson? What kind of logic was this? Behind closed doors, he could hit his own child however he liked. However, outsiders were not allowed to interfere. The great divine powers of the great desolate world were just that, tyrannical, supervising the disciples of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. There weren't many benefits to this job, but there were a lot of bad things. The better he did, the more people he would offend. If he didn't do it well, he would incur the displeasure of the three pure ones. No matter what he did, he could not do it well. If he could not satisfy everyone, he would definitely offend people. This was truly a tough job in the great desolate Eon. Eldest martial uncle, Xianqing has only cultivated for a few 100,000 years. In the Celestial Sect of Wonders, I have yet to make any contributions. How can I bear such a heavy responsibility? I hope that martial uncle will consider carefully and choose another talent. There are many immortal true immortals in the Xian sect. Among them, there are many who surpass Xianqing in terms of cultivation, character, and achievements. Among them, there must be someone who can fulfill Uncle's conditions and take on this heavy responsibility. Xianqing bowed to the Grand Pure One and declined with his lack of qualifications. His goal was to return to the Three Immortal Island and be the ancestor of the itinerant immortals there, living a carefree life. And to sit in that position, not to mention offending people, just dealing with the karma that tainted one's body every day would take an unimaginable amount of time. It would completely lose the original intention of being free and unfettered. Xianqing was not stupid. He had a bright future ahead of him. How could he be interested in such a position of karma entanglement? Karma was what delayed cultivation the most. Xianqing's words were reasonable and convincing. However, what kind of person was the Grand Pure One? With a thought, he could find out the past and future. How could Xianqing's thoughts be hidden from him? He smiled and said, "You're quite crafty. However, this position belongs to none other than you." Then, without giving Xianqing a chance to answer, he continued, "The Celestial Sect of Wonders only has 4 direct disciples. Poor Wei, your master, your uncle master, and your uncle master Niwa. The rest, such as Juin Ti, Dijun, Zenyuanzi, and Mingi, are all external disciples of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. What qualifications do they and their disciples have to bear this heavy responsibility? Doesn't this mean that there is no direct disciple of the Celestial Sect of Wonders? Therefore, The person who supervises the disciples of the Celestial Sect of Wonders must be a direct disciple of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. However, your Uncle Master Nuwa has never established a sect, nor has she accepted any disciples. The only disciple is the leader of the human race. It's not suitable for her to interfere in the affairs of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. After thinking about it, you're still the most suitable. You're the direct disciple of the Celestial Sect of Wonders and the first disciple of the third generation. Your cultivation has also reached the level of Daluo Jinxian. You're simply the chosen one. Although there were many disciples of the three pure ones, Xianqing was the only one who could win the hearts of the three at the same time. He was also the only one who had attained the Tao of Daluo Jinxian. In this way, who would be chosen if not him? Yes, Xianqing will obey Uncle Master's decree. Xianqing had no room to refuse and could only accept the order helplessly. Very good. You were born from the innate clear qi and are the most noble. You are the Taoist priests of the Celestial Path. Today, the Poor Way conferred you as the Celestial Lord of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. You will hold the immortal binding rope and supervise all the disciples of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. You can punish anyone who violates the rules of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. You have to be fair and just. You can't act recklessly and cause trouble for your own power. The Taiching sage was the first direct disciple of Hongjun, the first disciple of the Celestial Sect of Wonders and the future leader of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. In this era when Hongjun Taoist was in seclusion, he was the nominal leader of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. Therefore, conferring a Celestial Lord was nothing to him. As the Taiching sage's voice fell, the fate of the Celestial Sect of Wonders in the unseen world sensed it. A streak of purple gas dropped down and turned into a karmic position of the heavens and earth, entering Xianqing's body. 9 heavens, Celestial Lord. This was the name of the karmic position of the heavens and earth, which was given to Xianqing by the fate of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. From then on, he was the 9 heavens Celestial Lord of the Celestial Sect of Wonders, Taoist Xianqing. The 9 heavens were named after the same origin as the heaven realm. The Celestial Sovereign was the sovereign of the immortal Tao, the Daluo Taoist priests. This was the karmic rank of heaven and earth, condensed by the fate of the Xian sect. The Celestial Sect of Wonders, on the other hand, was the most powerful force in the untainted land. Even the combined forces of the shamans and demons might not be able to compete with it. After all, in name, the heavenly court also belonged to the Celestial Sect of Wonders. Therefore, the moment the Celestial Prime Karma rank was added, the 9 heaven celestial seal on Xianqing's body suddenly emitted a bright green light, and his aura rose steadily. It was the 9 heavens celestial seal that had received the help of the Celestial Sect's providence. It had broken through the limits of a superior grade connate spiritual treasure and was upgraded to a supreme grade connate spiritual treasure. The change in the fate of the Xian sect immediately attracted the attention of the relevant great powers, monitoring the disciples of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. That's not a bad idea. However, I don't have any disciples, so this matter has nothing to do with me. Instead, it's the fellow Taoists who have a lot of disciples who are going to have a headache. In Emperor Nvua's palace, Nuwa just smiled and stopped paying attention to the matter. In the end, this matter did not affect him. Daluo Jinxian. I didn't expect the disciples of the 3 pure ones to have already proven their Tao and become Daluo Jinxian. As for our disciples, the strongest one is only at the late stage of Tai. He hasn't even touched the threshold of Daluo Jinxian. The East is really a place full of outstanding talents and treasures. It's enviable. On Mount Meru, the 2 saints, Jie-in and Zhuan-Ti, focused their attention on Xianqing's cultivation and couldn't help but say with some envy, compared to the East, the West was too barren. Apart from the 2 of them, the number of innate gods and demons that were born was less than 5. It was really sad. As for monitoring the disciples of the celestial sect of wonders, the two saints didn't care. The Western sect valued the cultivation of the mind the most. They needed to constantly accumulate merit to ensure that their minds would not be invaded by external demons. Therefore, the current successors of the Western sect were all people with profound merit. They would definitely not violate the precepts of the celestial sect of wonders. Chapter 250. The Nine Heavens, Immortal Venerables. What is that eldest senior brother trying to do? Why did he have to create an immortal venerables and supervise the disciples of the celestial sect of wonders? What an eventful time. Even the celestial sect of wonders has been affected. It seems that it's better to let the disciples go out less during this calamity. Although many great mystical abilities of the celestial sect of wonders were puzzled by the Grand Pure One's actions, it did not stop them from coming up with a countermeasure. Xianqing, go ahead. Below Kunlun Mountain, your opportunity has arrived. After the matter was settled, the Grand Pure One waved his hand and said to Xianqing, Opportunity? What opportunity? I often live in Kunlun Mountain and have no contact with the outside world. How can I have an opportunity? Although he was puzzled, with the Grand Pure One's realm, he would not speak without thinking. If he said that there was an opportunity, there must be an opportunity. With that thought in mind, Xianqing bowed to the three of them. Master, Uncle Master, since that's the case, I'll take my leave first. With that, Xianqing turned around and left the Jade Void Palace. However, just as he took a few steps, he heard the Grand Master of Heaven say, Xianqing, you should know that you are already Daluo Jingxian. The height you're at is different. Therefore, you have to think about the consequences of any decision you make. Don't regret it in the future. Remember, Daluo has no regrets. Xianqing stopped and turned around. He replied, Yes, Master. I'll remember it. Daluo had no regrets. He knew that Daluo Jingxian had proven his Tao in the universe and was eternal and unique. Every action could leave a deep mark on the river of time and space. In the primordial world, because of Mount Buzhou, the river of time and space was extremely stable. No one could disturb it. Therefore, what Daluo Jingxian did was a permanent past. Regardless of whether it was right or wrong, it could not be changed. Once he did it, he could not regret it. That was Daluo had no regrets. Yes, just remember it. Don't cause trouble when you're outside. Don't be afraid of trouble. I and your two uncle masters have always been behind you. Tongtian nodded and said in an inexplicable tone, Master, did something happen? Sect leader Tongtian's words confused Xianqing. He didn't know what was going on, so he couldn't help but ask. Nothing serious. Go quickly. Don't let them wait for too long. The sect leader of Tongtian urged, shaking his head. Then, all right. Xianqing will leave now. Since Tongtian didn't want to say more, Xianqing didn't ask more. He bowed again and left the Jade Palace. This time, no one spoke to stop him. Senior brother, junior brother, now that this matter is settled, I still have other matters to attend to, so I'll head back first. Not long after Xianqing left, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning said to the Grand Master of Heaven and the Grand Pure One beside him, Junior brother, just do what you have to do. There's no need to care about the poor way, the Grand Pure One replied. The Prime of Tongtian nodded in agreement. Are you Taoist Xianqing? As soon as he arrived at the foot of Kunlun Mountain, Xianqing heard someone calling him. He couldn't help but look over. He saw a middle-aged man dressed as a scholar sizing him up with a smile. Looking at the person in front of him, Xianqing's eyes narrowed slightly. This person was not simple. His aura was hidden, but it gave people a feeling of looking up at a tall mountain. What's more, Xianqing actually felt a strong sense of danger from him. It was as if this person could bring him fatal danger. This person was Daluo Jingxian, the kind of Daluo who had reached the end of Daluo Jinxian's path and was about to break through to the quasi-saint realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given Xianqing such a great sense of danger. It's the poor Wei. May I know who you are? Why have you come to Kunlun Mountain to look for me? Xianqing nodded at the person and walked to his side. As for the danger, he wasn't worried at all. This was the foot of Kunlun Mountain, in front of the Three Saints dojo. Unless Hongjun Taoist made a move, no one in the primordial world could hurt him at all. The path of wisdom. Who is this person? He's actually proficient in the path of wisdom. As he approached this person, Xianqing felt the aura of the path of wisdom from this person. This aura was very faint, so faint that it was difficult to detect. If he didn't often come into contact with Jiang Xiong and Jiang Hui, the siblings who were the incarnations of the treasure of wisdom, he was extremely sensitive to the aura of the path of wisdom and almost missed it. This person was actually Daluo Jingxian, who had attained the path of wisdom. It was really rare in the primordial world. Poor Wei, Bai Zhe of the Demon Clan, greets fellow Taoist Xianqing. Bai Zhe smiled politely and said, Demon God Bai Zhe, so it was him. No wonder he could attain the path of wisdom. Bai Zhe was known to know astronomy and geography. He could see through the past and see the future. Good words reached the feelings of all things. This beast was extremely intelligent. It was a Khanate god fiend born from the path of wisdom. It was the military advisor of the demon clan and ranked first among the top 10 demons. Its cultivation level was the limit of Daluo Jingxian. Its status in the demon clan was second only to the quasi-saint. However, Xianqing and the demon clan didn't have any interaction. Why did Bai Zhe come to him? So it's demon god Bai Zhe. I'm sorry. I wonder why fellow Taoist came to Kunlun Mountain to look for poor Wei? Poor Wei doesn't seem to be familiar with fellow Taoist or even the entire demon clan. After being polite for a while, Xianqing asked directly, Haha, fellow Taoist, there's no need to be confused. We've never met before. This is the first time we've met. Today, poor Wei came to Kunlun Mountain on the orders of my Majesty to congratulate fellow Taoist on attaining the path of Daluo Jingxian. As he spoke, Bai Zhe took out a jade pot and was about to hand it to Xianqing. Perhaps Bai Zhe didn't understand why Di Jun would be so concerned about a person he had never met before. He specially sent him to bring a pot of sangguang, holy water, to congratulate him. But the moment he saw Xianqing, Bai Zhe understood everything. The person in front of him was surrounded by immortal light and emitted an aura that was no different from the origin of the heaven realm. The Khanate, clear qi even seeped out of his body and turned into auspicious clouds that covered a radius of 10,000 miles. All kinds of phenomena were indicating Xianqing's identity. He was a Khanate god fiend born from the Khanate clear qi. With Bai Zhe's intelligence, when he recognized Xianqing's identity, he naturally guessed Di Jun's plan. As Bai Zhe explained, all the heavenly secrets that had been hidden were revealed to Xianqing at this moment, allowing him to understand the cause and effect of the matter. No wonder I couldn't deduce anything previously. It turns out that it involves the heavenly court. When the Grand Pure One said that his opportunity had arrived, Xianqing had secretly deduced it. However, as far as his divine sense could see, the heavenly secrets were a vast expanse and nothing could be divined. Now he understood everything. The heavenly court had the Khanate cardinal treasure, the chaos bell, several powerful experts, and thousands of Daluo Jingxian. How could Xianqing, a Daluo Jingxian, deduce it? You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.